What's up, everybody? We are live again. I am back this week with the Dizzle. As you can see, that is his proper name, the name he is known by, one of his 99 names, of course, but his most favorite. How you doing today, Dizzle?
Hey, how you doing? Mike Jones.
That's me. As you all know, I am the retired rapper from 30 years ago. Age changes you. I don't look exactly as I did all that time ago, but here I am now doing YouTube. So really step up in reality, going from rap career. I can't even imagine myself rapping. I feel like I would. Doesn't seem like it come out of me.
It would be pretty powerful.
Yeah. Oh, powerful. Extremely. As powerful as the arguments from the Muslim Cowboy, as you all know.
That's the greatest da'i of modern times right there.
Dude, he's becoming my favorite da'i. He is a wellspring of content. And the stuff he puts out, man, the people tag me and I'm just like, oh boy, is he even trying? Like this. Well, you sent me one of his videos, which we're going to go through in a little bit, but I was like, dude, like you can't accuse someone of being stupid if you're going to make this argument, but that's what he's doing in the video. It is something else.
Yeah. Him more than like I pointed out with, because people bring up the issue sometimes when me and AP are live that does it ever seem to us that some of these guys are just faking or that they're plants or that they're just grifters or something like that? Some of the Dawa guys. And, or even like, it's amazing where the people who are the most conspiracy minded people on the planet, like Jews are behind everything that happens. There's a Jew somewhere behind it. But when their Dawa guys are making complete clowns of Islam, it never crosses their mind. Well, maybe Mossad paid this guy to destroy Islam from within by making it look so incredibly stupid. But I always point out that even I can't rule that sort of thing out. But I do believe your average Dawa guy, Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawa and Daniel Hakikachu and these guys, I think they're sincere. They have dumb arguments and stuff. I believe they're sincere, but I have to say, if I were paid by an organization like Mossad to destroy Islam from within by pretending to be a Dawa guy, I would do exactly what these guys are doing. I mean, I would be doing exactly what Daniel Hakikachu does. I'll be like, yes, we're going to make Islam all about child marriage, and this is going to be the hill we die on here. Child marriage. That is exactly what I would do. And so it's always in the realm of possibility that some of these guys are just either total grifters or actually deliberately trying to destroy Islam from within, even though I don't think that's what's actually going on. I think some of the popular reverts are just total grifters, like Sneeko and Andrew Tate and so on. I think it's just, here's a community that I can jump into that will have my back no matter what, and I'll get tons of support. And then I can claim that when people criticize me, I can say, oh, look, they're persecuting me because I'm a Muslim. It's the Matrix or something like that. But with the Muslim Cowboy, it's another situation where, I mean, more than anyone else, like you're listening to the guy, it's like he can't be serious. You can't be serious. You can't be this dumb. It's one of the reasons I believe in a spiritual realm. Sometimes people will be sitting there saying stuff with a straight face, and I'll be, that is so insanely stupid that you're causing me to have more confidence in demonic forces at work right now, because I can't imagine anyone being this stupid. And it's like that with the Muslim Cowboy. Like, you can't actually be this dumb. So are you scamming, or is this deliberate? I don't know, but it's pretty bad.
It's not just that they're dumb. They're also incredibly evil with some of the things they say. Like, I got this screenshot on his page. He's saying, okay, something stupid. Israel was a Muslim, not a Jew.
Oh, hang on. Let's read this. Let's read this as a dialogue. You be Cat Canada. I'll be the Muslim Cowboy. Ready?
Oh, yeah.
Israel was a Muslim. Yeah, not a Jew.
Muhammad was a fake white prophet with black slaves. David Wood slides.
And then she got a bunch of slides there about Muhammad being the whitest person in history and buying and selling and trading black African slaves. And then back to the Muslim Cowboy. Maybe one day you will be my slave and you can wash my clothes and cook my dinner. And that ain't all, because you know what we do to our slave girls. You. Either way, none of this disproves he was a prophet.
And this is on top of his recent things like you were responding to in your lives on him and his constant promotion of child marriage, trying to justify Muhammad's marriage to Aisha at 6 and consummating at age 9. So it's not like we're going after people that are just, bless the kind of person you'd say, bless your heart to. These people are not only dumb, they're incredibly, incredibly evil and the kind of things they're promoting, like child marriage and enslaving women. Like, seriously, like this is the new face of Dawah right here. This guy, like, wow, it's phenomenal for us. But I mean, like, wow, this is you Muslims want representing you, really? This guy,
powerful Dawah, ha ha ha. You can be my slave, ha 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 ha. That's the new face of Dawah there. Interesting.
Yeah. And last minute, Rob Rowe decided to join us.
Hey, wait a second. So I'm scrolling.
The Australian joins in.
What were you saying?
Yeah,
David.
Oh, yeah. Well, it makes sense that Rob's going to be late because he's on the opposite side of the world and clocks run backwards there or something.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
No, I was like, oh, I want to screenshot that. So I went to the Muslim Cowboys Twitter page to scroll through to find that tweet. And then as I'm scrolling down, I see him blasting you.
Oh yeah, we're gonna cover that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, so he's going after you and totally exposing and humiliating you. So that's good work, Muslim Cowboy.
He's humiliated me. Yes, absolutely.
Humiliated.
Rob asked to join like 5 minutes ago because apparently he's got something special to say. So it better be pretty great, Rob, for an update for changing my schedule last minute here. Better have some pretty amazing, powerful argument. So arguments so powerful that the Dawah guys would be impressed. They better be better than their arguments. They're super impressive arguments.
I've had about 3 engagements with Muslim Cowboy, and he's blocked me.
Interesting.
Oh, really?
You're lucky. I hope he doesn't block me. He's a wellspring of content creation. I need this. He's like one of those guys is like, hey, I need to do a short today. Let me go see what he's been up to. And sure enough, I find something. He's like one of my list of like content creators I can use.
Is my mic working? Is it all right?
Oh yeah, you're good.
Yep.
Okay, good. No, I've had 3 or 4 engagements on one of his streams, and it's crowd control. He has a lot of yes men, and if I raise any academic context with respect to the Quran, his mind just shuts off, and I'm a kafir and kufar or whatever it's called.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a weird dude in that, like, he'll be talking about, like, I first started like paying attention to some of the stupid stuff he was saying when he was talking about all this child marriage stuff, and Aisha was a woman and all this, but it's like amazing because I'm looking at his thread of tweets, and he's wrong about what Islam teaches, he's wrong about what the Bible teaches, and he's wrong about science. And it's like, how can you be wrong in every category of things that you're talking about? And how is this just never, ever a problem in the Dawah community that if you don't know what you're talking, it's like the less you know about what you're talking about, the more they like you, the more your fans will like you, which would be a reverse. If we had Christian apologists, and let's say Christian apologists are going around, like, let's say they're trying to give arguments from physics or something like that, and they didn't know about physics, there'll be some Christians calling, if they started getting like tons of factual information about physics wrong, let's say, there'll be other Christians who would call them, at first they would like start sending them messages behind the scene. Dude, you don't know what you're talking about. You should probably get like someone on with you who knows what they're talking about. And if they just kept on with it, eventually people would start calling them out like more publicly, like, hey guys, just so you know, this person means well, but doesn't know what he's talking about. So don't listen to that person when he's talking about physics or something like that. In Dawah, there's never any check. You can be as wrong as you want about Islam. It doesn't matter. You can completely misrepresent Islam. Like when he was saying that Aisha had reached puberty and stuff, and that Islam requires puberty. That's completely false. That's not what Islam teaches. If you're talking about child marriage in the Bible, nope, wrong. Try again. If you're saying something about the moment you see signs of puberty, you're a woman. No, that's false. That's false according to biology. So like every category of things that he's talking about, he's totally wrong in. And doesn't
Yeah.
stop anyone.
Yeah, and like I've had Christians like reach out to me and be like, "Hey, you need to fix this." So I've taken down entire videos and redone them because people have said, "Hey, errors, fix them." So yeah, I've done that for sure. I don't see that happening a lot with some of these guys. Maybe it is. We're just missing it, but I'm not seeing a lot of it. Yeah. And today,
and as oh,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and as Mike Jones knows about me, I don't know if you know this, David, but I'm a massive critique of, say, the young creationist crowd. So the Ken Ham lot in America. So sorry, he's an Australian, but he's in America. And despite that, I find a lot of the Dawa guys, especially Muslim Cowboy, to be worse than the younger creationists when it comes to science. So they actually go out of their way. In fact, I would argue that there are more anti-intellectual scientific views of, say, human anthropology, evolution, and so on, from the Muslim circles and even the younger creationists themselves. So at least the younger creationists try and make a model. Like if you go and look into their
That's what I was thinking when you were bringing it up. When you were bringing it up, they're actually using science. They're trying to argue from they're trying to get their answer from science
through their concordance model that they've made. Yes.
Yeah, and they will have actually competent scientists who agree with them on some of the issues to defend their point. Whereas, like Ali Dawa talking about the 7 ozone layers and stuff like that, it's like, okay, you have absolutely no clue what you're talking about, but neither do your listeners, and so you're in a situation where you can spout complete nonsense and just no one cares and there's no accountability.
Yeah. Yes, Talmudic Tunnels Construction Inc. Time to look into the Muslim Cowboy shorts. I got a couple lined up here. We're going to be diving into.
We're going to go through some Muslim Cowboy shorts. Why?
Oh, yeah.
There's been some lawsuits. No, just kidding.
First, look into some of these. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this won't be the first time. This won't be the last time Muslim Cowboy is gonna have someone going through his shorts. The next time it'll be like CSI. After reading some of his tweets defending child marriage and stuff. Anyway,
yeah,
pretty creepy.
Go through some super chats here. Recent Christian, former atheist from Australia. That's in your neck of the woods, there, Rob. Your videos were essential to me becoming a theist and later a Christian, as they answered 99% of my questions. David would love your videos too. They're awesome. God bless both of you. Well, thank you for the super chat, George, and it's wonderful to hear that you are Christian. That is always great to see. From Grand Lord Catching, has the Dizzler told you about notable
I'm gonna start rolling Dizzler because it sounds like diddler.
Notable elementary school guidance counselor.
Hey, I should debate vocab as Prophet Muhammad and call it the Dizzler versus the Diddler.
Pretty good. Who's the guidance counselor Daniel Ineptitude? Is that in his new Islamic sewage company? Is this a Daniel Hakikichu thing?
That's Daniel. I need to poo.
I get it.
Did you catch that? His new Islamic sewage company, because his channel's called The Muslim Skeptic, and then someone in the chat yesterday proposed the Muslim Septic as his as another name for his channel. So I think that's what they're referring to with the Islamic sewage company.
Are there any good books showing that Satan is not the human adversary and show there are a literal devil? I see the start of the allegorical devil starting with Isaac Newton, David Joris in the 1500s. Well, I mean, the New Testament does not present him as a human adversary. Jesus is clear that Satan in the New Testament is more than that. Some have made the case that in Job, the adversary is a divine being that could refer to Satan. Some have argued against that, but it's not a proper name in Job. It just refers to the Satan, the adversary, but it's not always a human adversary. It probably one in, I believe, 1 Samuel, dealing with David in the census. I think that's also a divine adversary. It just doesn't become a proper name until the New Testament. Thank you for the super chat, Antonio. Last super chat before we get to the videos. Hey guys, glad I caught you live. Question: how do I respond to objections to Christianity based on harsh Old Testament passages? I will let Rob answer this because he knows stuff on this, but I did a video called The Misunderstood Mosaic Law and the Imperfect Mosaic Law. So 2 videos. If you check those out, that should give you enough because it puts the Mosaic Law in context. It helps you understand like what's going on here. the development of moral progress, the cultural context of the Torah. Check out those 2 videos. Rob, you got anything else?
Yeah, in regards to these 2 passages, I recommend the Anchor Yale commentary on Leviticus and also the Continental commentary, I think it's called, by Baruch Levine and Milgram, Jacob Milgram. His name was missing, and I just remembered. They do an interesting job showing the ancient Near Eastern law codes. So, in fact, even the Zondervan Bible background will actually showcase, say, Leviticus 18 and 20 in regards to the parallel between Hammurabi, Hittite. You'll find that there's a lot of lenience to a lot of practices that we would actually be horrified by those ancient Near Eastern cultures. So in other words, the Levitical law code is more strict. But that being said, the interesting thing about Leviticus 18, in fact, I've written a blog post on this, that I think knowledge on the ancient Near East should nuance the way we engage the topic of, in this case, homosexuality. Because there's no mention of women in that passage. It specifically focuses on men in regards to ancient primitive understandings of procreation. I'll just leave it at that. But basically, look at Levine, look at Milgram. They do a good job showing the rationality for those passages from that ancient Near Eastern culture. And therefore, it has no application for us today because we're under the law of Christ, and we should look at the way the New Testament engages with sexual topics.
Pretty boring, Rob. Pretty boring. All right. Appreciate it.
All
All right. I'm going to play a 57-second video from the Muslim Cowboy. I'm going to play it through. This is one of my favorite ones he's done, and I want to see if you guys can catch the problem here. So this is, audience, you got some homework here. Pay attention to what he's saying here, because we're going to see if we can find the very obvious error. Got to use your eyes to see what's going on here. Let's put this up here.
And a lot of people have been telling me, hey, man, the Bible's been changed. There's stuff missing from it. And I said, nah, you joking. Well, they said Matthew 17, verse 21 ain't there in the Bible anymore. Someone took it out. I said, you full of it. So come over here. Come over here and take a look. This is Matthew 17, and we're going to go 19. There's 20, because your little faith, okay. It's got to be right after that, verse 21. Verse 22. There's no 21. So I told myself, let's go get an old Bible. Get an old 1800s Bible. Matthew 17, 21. And what do you know? Here's chapter 17, verse 21. Howbeit this kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting. So somebody changed the Bible, and then I found out there's tons of verses that have been changed and are missing and are added to the Bible. How can we trust this book?
All right. Who caught the error? Who saw it? It was on screen. Who caught it? Let me go back here. So he is claiming that
I'm just so you know, I'm not going to give the answer because I saw the response.
Awesome. So he's claiming that Matthew, what is it? 17:21 is what he's saying there? No, 27 or 17. Sorry, 21. It was taken out of the Bible. He gets an old 1800s Bible, and he thinks it's the King James. The problem is what he doesn't realize is that's a parallel Bible. On one side of the screen is the King James, and on the other side is the Revised Version. Dates to the 1880s. The Revised Version updated based on the earliest manuscripts they had at the time. Same as what more recent translations do. He thinks he's going in there. And if you notice right here, he doesn't read the other side of the page. You can see verse 21 is also missing on the right side of the screen there. So he's trying to say verse 21 was in this in the 1800s, and then it was removed in modern Bibles. He doesn't realize in the very Bible he has up, it's also missing in the Revised Version. And so he thinks this is somehow evidence that we are removing verses from our Bible, when in actuality, the Revised Versions came out because it was using the most earliest manuscripts. It was going back to what we got from the earliest church possible and saying, hey, this looks like it was a marginal note added in at a later point. So let's remove it since it wasn't in the earliest manuscripts. Right then and there, it shows you he's not even able to read the very thing on the page in front of him to get a better understanding of what's going on. That's what we're dealing with, folks.
Pretty powerful stuff from our good friend, the Muslim Cowboy. Let's see.
And I just to add, he is so proud of this video. He's so proud of this video. He has pinned it to the top of his TikTok page because it got 1.2 million views. He's so proud of it, even though numerous people have showed him this is a flat out error. He's like, I got to pin this to the top of my page.
Yeah. So you have multiple issues with this right here. So we know how this sort of textual variant arises, right? Because you have parallel stories in that's why they're called the synoptics. You have parallel stories in Matthew, Mark, and Luke quite a bit. But when a copyist is copying Matthew, if he knows Mark really well, and you have that verse in Mark 9:29, there's a tendency to, hey, this kind only comes out by prayer, right? Because that you know that from the Gospel of Mark. And so we know how these kind of textual variants arise. And so there's no confusion there. You can't say, oh, that they were trying to take the teaching out of the Bible. The teaching is still in Mark, right? The teaching is still in Mark. The idea is that there's, so you have a question in some manuscripts, it occurs in Matthew, and in some manuscripts, it doesn't occur in Matthew. And it's easier to explain someone adding that because it's in Mark than someone deliberately removing it. And so you look at the manuscripts, how early the manuscripts are and stuff. And this is textual criticism. This is what textual critics do. They say, okay, we have textual variants here. Now let's try and get to the bottom of this. So what could you actually say? Has the teaching changed or something? No, it's still in the Bible. You had a textual variant. So the only legitimate thing you can say as a criticism is there's a textual variant there.
Yeah. Right.
If that means the book is called into question and you can't trust the book, great. There are endless textual variants in the Quran. There are 10. If you just go with the official Bridges edition of the 10 Qira'at, there are tens of thousands of textual variants just in those. That's not talking about going through manuscripts. I mean, there was a Brubaker video where he showed one page of the Quran. There were like 11 textual variants on a single page of of an old manuscript of the Quran. And then you go to the Muslim sources and they talk about entire chapters coming up missing. I mean, think about this. You can read the hadith and it'll talk about the verse of breastfeeding an adult. And it'll say, and this was abrogated, and then it got abrogated to breastfeeding an adult 5 times instead of 10 times. These are supposed to be in the Quran. You open the Quran, they're not in the Quran. So should we conclude corruption there? No, any Muslim's going to say, well, there are reasons that it's not in there.
Right.
And so it's just an amazing situation where you go through their sources and they talk about entire chapters coming up missing, large passages coming up missing, verses being eaten by a sheep, passages coming up missing because the only people who had them memorized died in battle. In fact, the entire reason for assembling the Quran into a book, the Quran was not supposed to be a book originally. It was supposed to be preserved in human memory. They lost so much of it. They lost so much of the Quran because they were trying to preserve it by human memory when the people who had it memorized were fighting battles. That Abu Bakr, he ordered Zayd ibn Thabit to put together a copy of the Quran, not to be read, not to be recited, just so that they don't lose anymore. And this was just kept in the house so that they won't actually lose anymore. And if more people die who have passages memorized, no problem, we'll have a hard copy. So that was the entire reason for compiling the Quran into a book, was because their memories couldn't preserve it accurately. And so you have this. That's what you have in the early parts. Then you have generations of textual variants, and now you have different Qurans in different parts of the world with different words and different letters and so on. And in Islam, what happened was in 1924 they issued what's called the 1924 Cairo edition of the Quran, and they issued this as it took them 7 years to work on this, but it was understood back then that different Muslims in different parts of the world use different Qurans. And they put out the 1924 Cairo edition. It became so popular that after a while, once you get to the 1980s and so on, Muslims start saying, see, there's only one Quran. It's been perfectly preserved forever, right down to the letter. And this is our only Quran. It was complete nonsense to anyone who knew the history of the Quran, but they used this. And now the Dawah guys have stopped using the perfect preservation argument because it's been exposed. They've been exposed as liars. And so they're dropping it. But the Muslim Cowboy sort of, he seems to have the same idea in his head that if you have a textual variant or if something comes up missing or something like that, you see that's evidence of the corruption of the Bible, and you can't trust the Bible. It doesn't seem like he's even caught on to what's going on with the Quran. Because here's the thing. What can you legitimately say? What can you legitimately say if you're criticizing the Bible over, if you're questioning the reliability of the Bible? You could say there are textual variants. You can't say there are textual variants that corrupt major Christian doctrine or something like that. You can't do that. So there are textual variants. Most of them are things like spelling errors and spelling differences and so on, because you can spell words in different ways and so on. And so different copyists over time spelled things in different ways. And so you have spelling errors like that. Nothing affects Christianity. You never have a textual variant where Jesus doesn't die on the cross or doesn't rise from the dead or he's not Lord. You don't have anything you don't have something that can affect Christian doctrine. But what you can legitimately say, you can say there are lots of textual variants, and that just happens when you're copying a book by hand for centuries. So you have textual variants. You can say that you have basically two significant ones. So you have the long passage in John, and then you have the longer ending of Mark. So you have some that are like significant in terms of length. And then you can say that when they're putting together the canon of Scripture, there were some disputes over some of the smaller books like 2nd and 3rd John, because those hadn't circulated as widely as like the Gospel of John and the Gospel of Matthew and so on. So these are the things you can legitimately say. But if that's what you're going to say, hey, there are textual variants in the manuscripts, and there are some questions about which one goes back to the original. If you're going to say that, and you're going to say, well, there are some disputes when they're compiling the canon about like 2nd and 3rd John, because these shorter books some of these shorter books hadn't circulated as widely, and so some people are like, hey, we don't know about that. So you could say there's some disputes. If you want to say that is a problem for the Bible and that the Bible cannot be trusted for that, guess what? You have piles of textual variants in the Quran. You have variants in different Qurans that are still used today. And if you're going to say it's a problem that Christians had some disputes over some of the shorter books, guess what? Muslims had disputes over Surah 1, Surah 113, and Surah 114. Abdullah ibn Masud, Muhammad's top expert on the Quran. Muhammad said, if you want to learn the Quran from anyone, learn it from him. He said those 3 chapters are not supposed to be in the Quran. Those are prayers. That's us talking to Allah. The Quran is Allah talking to us. These are prayers where we're talking to Allah. That's not the Quran. These are just prayers that we recite. And then you had Ubay ibn Ka'b, who had all 114 chapters that are in the Quran today and 2 additional chapters that are not in. So that's 5 disputed chapters of the Quran that were from the beginning. We're not talking about like generations later had a dispute about it. This goes back to the beginning. Your average Muslim knows about none of this at all. The Muslim Cowboy, I don't think, knows about any of this stuff. And he's presenting this as a problem. Look right there. Oh, right there. I'm going to pin this video because this is a powerhouse video. And his followers are so dumb that they don't know anything about the Bible. They don't know that, oh, you got the same thing in the Gospel of Mark. They don't know about textual criticism. And they don't know that they have massive, massive problems with the preservation of the Quran when entire chapters and stuff are coming up missing. So this is just dawah. It's all like ignorance and deception from beginning to end.
If you want a good website, this is something that was showed to me at ETS when David and I were there. They actually have a website where they're compiling like different parts of the Quran and the textual variants, and you can go through like these various places and just go to like the grayed out, and you can see the variants there. So you can see like, look, additional stuff here, there. This is still, as I said, a work in progress, but I mean, like, yeah, there's variants in the Quran, like. And just to add to what David said, there's a lot when it comes to this. I don't know of any ancient text that doesn't have variants if we have more than one manuscript of it. I mean, that just is going to happen when you're copying by hand. So, but yeah, none of the textual variants threaten any essential Christian doctrines, which Bart Ehrman has even admitted in an updated version of misquoting Jesus. So yeah, this is just utter nonsense, but yeah, I think David basically covered it pretty well.
Yeah, and by the way, IP, since you just pointed out and I pointed out that, hey, these are not things that affect doctrines, right? There are things like spelling errors and so on. In when we're talking about variants in the Bible, that's the new Muslim position, because now people are catching on to the fact that there are textual variants in the manuscripts of the Quran. But that's Shabir Ali's position now. He says, yes, there are textual variants. Yes, there are different words. Yes, we have different Qurans that are used in different parts of the world, but it doesn't affect any core Muslim doctrine. It's like, wait a minute, that's exactly what we've been saying forever. When
Yeah.
you guys have been criticizing it, and Muslim dais, no, that's not good enough. It means that God's not preserving your book. Oh, what a stupid explanation! Now they're using the exact same explanation.
Exactly. All right, I got another video of the Muslim Cowboy that I think Rob is going to thoroughly enjoy.
Well,
Oh, what is
can
it,
I
Rob?
quickly just
Yeah.
share 2 points in regards to
Uh-huh.
this? I want to share what Dan Wallace said in Peter Gurry's Myths and Mistakes in New Testament Criticism. So I basically copied and pasted this in a blog post I wrote. I've just highlighted that bit. So Wallace quotes Stephen Neal, who says, "The very worst Greek manuscript now in existence contains enough of the gospel in unadulterated form," keyword, "to lead the reader into the way of salvation." All right, now that's example number 1. Example number 2, in the Hadith, in regards to Surah 9, verses 128 and 129, you have those 2 verses, okay, that don't really fit the context of the whole chapter at large. And here you have Zayed speaking about Abu Bakr sent for me and said, "You used to write the divine revelations for Allah's messenger. So you should search for the Quran and collect it." I started searching for the Quran till I found the last 2 verses of Surah At-Tawbah with Abi Kuza, and I could not find these verses with anybody other than him. So hang on a second. Just by mere happenstance, they're like scurrying around, searching, to put the Quran together. What about the fact that there could be other so-called abikuzas running around that they could not have consulted, and hence verses or ayah that may have not been included into the Quran? What's interesting is that when you look at how the patristics engaged in early church, when present-day textual critics look at, say, the early church and how they look at the New Testament formation and so on, there's none of this scurrying around, Matthew 17:21 is missing, guys. Did you recollect Jesus saying that? And no one's doing that. Rather, we have the wealth of all the manuscripts where you have scribal editorial notes emphasizing like theological points sometimes, and then down the line, for example, the Johannine Comma is a classic, where Erasmus actually then is forced to include it, although he himself was a little bit sketchy on it, but now thankfully it's been removed. So we don't have, in other words, we don't have this sort of like guesswork with respect to the New Testament transmission. But here is a clear example of the Quran with sort of like a guesswork going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to add something to what since he was pointing that out. Passages like that in the Hadiths, which talk about how the Quran was actually compiled. I mean, even initially, when Abu Bakr tells Zayd ibn Thabit, "Hey, I want you to compile the Quran," he said, "Man, if you'd been asking me to move mountains around, I would have thought that was a better idea." And it's like, wait, your average Muslim thinks that Muhammad revealed the Quran to his followers, and that there were all these tons of followers who had it memorized verse by verse, and they could all recite it perfectly and so on. And it's like, wait a minute, if that was the case, I mean, the Quran's smaller than the New Testament. The Quran is smaller than the New Testament. If it was really all these guys have it perfectly memorized, it's all easy, then when Zayd ibn Thabit decides, hey, I have to compile the Quran, it's basically a bunch of writing, right? You can pick any 2 of these guys. If you want 2 witnesses, you can pick any 2 guys and say, hey, guys, sit down and let me write. And I'm just going to write. And that's it. And it would take a while. It might take a few days to write this out. But it would have been a very, very easy process. You look at the actual sources and they're like, oh, let's go over here and maybe we can find this guy who's got a part of it. Oh, let's travel over here and we can find it. That doesn't make any sense given what Muslims believe about the text of the Quran. Again, there were all these people had it memorized, and they've got it memorized perfectly. All you need to do is have these guys sit down and you could copy it out perfectly. And yet it's like I have to be a super sleuth to go and even find what's left of the Quran. It's just, I don't know. It's a really sad situation that their leaders, think about the overall project here. We need to show that people need to convert to Islam and not to Christianity. How are we going to do this? Well, we have to show that the Quran is better than the Bible. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to lie about the Quran. We're going to lie about the Bible. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to dupe a generation of people who trust us and don't know how to do any research on their own. And we're going to dupe them into thinking the Quran's been perfectly preserved right down to the letter and the Bible's been corrupted. And it's just, I don't know. It's just what, like, how do you use that as your methodology? And then when people actually investigate it and find out you guys are lying about the Quran, you're lying about the Bible, what's going on here? And then how do you see that exposed and then think, oh yeah, these guys are following the religion of truth? The truth does not need that. The truth does not need your lies to defend it. It's just pathetic.
Powerful. All right. I'm going to add this next video. This is a shorter video, but it is.
Apparently, my mouth's gonna water over this, right? Apparently. So,
You're gonna be very confused when I put this up here of what he's actually.
No, he's going to convert. He's going to convert.
He's going to convert. All right, Rob, are you ready to take your shahada after you watch this? Because this is going to blow your mind.
Ready. Yes.
Who can't even put together two neurons to form a synapse to make a single critical thought. But look on screen, there is no Allah in Genesis. Well, guess what? I've got a surprise for you, buddy. في البدء خلق الله السماوات والأرض. In the beginning, Allah created the heavens and the earth. Allah. I think all the Hulu you're watching is scrambling your brain. Meanwhile,
that's the end of it. So, all right, Rob, he's proven beyond shadow of a doubt Allah is in Genesis. What do you have to say to that?
And then Jesus, son of Allah, said, "For Allah so loved the world, he gave his only son."
Yeah.
I mean, linguistically, this is just a nonsense argument. Obviously, Allah will be in the Arabic Bible.
Yeah.
But it's not the same deity.
Here's the problem.
What's the point? I don't know what's...
Yeah, someone's pointing out to him that so in Islam now they think of Allah as a name, as like the name of God. And so people are pointing out, but Allah's not in the Bible. So how come they didn't know the name of God? And his response is to go his response is to go to an Arabic translation. This would be like, suppose you had some Germans. Suppose you had some Germans. Suppose you had Germans and they thought that the actual name of God is Gott, right? Because that's the German word. And you say, oh, but if the name of God is actually Gott, why wouldn't you find that in the Bible? And then like the response of one of these guys would be, look, I went to the German Bible right here and it does say Gott. You see, his name is right here.
I got it. No. When Jehovah, okay, the German pronunciation of Tetragrammaton, when Jehovah creates Chaos Kampf for Yam, the Chaos Waters. This is what I bring up with the Jehovah's Witnesses. They literally say Moses believed in Jehovah. It's like, dude, don't you realize that's a German pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton? It's like this anachronism is just. I get it now.
Oh, I got a real treat for both of you. You've not seen this though. So he wants to cite the Arabic here, but what happens when we go to another one of his older videos from like I think early January here, and he's responding to some Christian. I'm not going to play this whole video because it's not important to my point here, but notice what he says here.
Quran as well, it says we when Allah is speaking. So who is that we in the one God concept? Well, that kind of negates the we.
Good question. When you say we, you're reading in English. As soon as you say English words, it's not the Quran. The Quran is only Arabic. Whenever it's translated, it now becomes what's called a tafsir, an explanation, a exegesis of the text. In language, in the Arabic language, when you learn Arabic, before the Prophet, peace be upon him.
All right. So get the point. When it comes to the Quran, only the Arabic matters. But when it comes to the Bible, only the Arabic matters, not the Hebrew or the Greek.
Hey, well, that's Ken Hovind. The Arabic corrects the Hebrew and the Greek, like how Ken Hovind says the English corrects the.
Yeah. What, David?
But wait. Is he saying that the we is only in the English and not in the Arabic?
Yeah. Here, I'll play the whole video.
Did he just say that?
Yeah.
Did he just say that?
Yeah, here, I'll play it.
Is only Arabic. Whenever it's translated, it now becomes what's called a tafsir, an explanation, a exegesis of the text. In language, in the Arabic language, when you learn Arabic, before the Prophet, peace be upon him, was sent, any person who was a leader of a tribe or someone who was of royalty, we even see this in other languages, when they say we, when they're making a declarative type of statement, a statement from power, they would say we, even if it's just one. The King of England, the Queen of England, whenever a proclamation is issued, Queen Elizabeth, before she died, would say we, but she's the queen. There was no king. It was just her, but she is saying we. It's called the royal we. This is something that's very clear.
Yeah, so he's
Okay,
arguing
so-
it's some a royal we.
Yeah, this is funny because, you know, the a king or queen can use the royal we because you speak on behalf of the people. So who is, when God is creating, who is he speaking on behalf of if he hasn't created yet? So that's one issue, but this is also called the plural of majesty. So the point is you can't use the royal we when it's something that just Allah is doing. It's not Allah and everyone else who's doing it. It's not Allah and all his people who are doing these things. This is Allah by himself doing things, and he's using the royal we. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. He's not speaking on behalf of the people that he's and he's doing these things. So this is why people who are a bit sharper than the Muslim Cowboy, which would be pretty much anyone, they say it's the plural of majesty, that you're so majestic. You're so majestic that you use the plural. Now, the problem there, the reason that doesn't work, so the royal we doesn't work, the plural of majesty doesn't work either, or rather, if it does, fine, but then Allah ends up being an inferior deity. Because so the argument is that it's more majestic. A being that's plural has greater majesty than a singular being. And so Allah, to demonstrate his majesty, refers to himself with plural pronouns. So what's the problem there? Well, the problem is that the assumption is that it's more majestic to be plural, and so it's sort of an underlying premise throughout the Quran that one God is superior to polytheism. And yet, if Allah is using the plural of majesty, then Allah is saying it's better, it's somehow greater and more majestic to be plural rather than to be Unitarian. What would that mean? It would mean that the God of the Bible, who's one and simultaneously a plurality of persons, that God is actually greater and more majestic than Allah. And so Islam would have an inferior deity.
Yeah. Well, it's not just that. I mean, if he's now saying that the original language matters to what it's written, when he was citing the Arabic where it says Allah, and he's trying, and again, in Islam, he said this, and I'll show you the tweet here in a minute, but he is saying that basically that the name Allah is in Genesis because he found an Arabic version. We know the original Hebrew, because he says he cares about the original language, is actually Elohim there. Now, Elohim does not just mean God. It basically just means, as Michael Heiser has pointed out, any spiritual being. So any spiritual being can be called an Elohim. So the heavenly council, which Heiser talks about in his book, The Unseen Realm, the gods of foreign nations, demons. Elohim is not a name. Muslim Cowboy is saying Elohim is a name, and it refers to the name Allah because he says Allah is his name. If that's the case, we can just render the Muslim Cowboy translation and start going to some of these places where the Bible apparently talks about Allah. Like the Muslim Cowboy translation would have to say Deuteronomy 32:17 says they sacrificed to demons that were no gods. To Allah they had never known. So sacrificing to what? To demons? Is that what it's saying here? Another place, Exodus 12:12. This is the Lord speaking. So Hashem, he says, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night. I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man, beast, and on Allah of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord." So there we go again. We see that now, if Muslim Cowboy's right, Elohim refers to the name Allah. He would also have to understand that Allah is a pagan deity in Egypt. Here's another good one. This is
guys,
where
one second. I just want to make sure everyone understands the point you're making, because some people are totally new to things and can be hard to catch on at first. So guys, just to recap, especially if you're just tuning in, the Muslim Cowboys challenged on why the name of Allah doesn't occur in the Bible. And so to answer that, to respond to it, he goes to Genesis and to the Arabic translation, which IP already pointed out the hypocrisy there. When you recite the Quran in English, he goes, it's only the Arabic. The Arabic is all that counts. But somehow an Arabic translation of the Bible is totally relevant. But he goes to an Arabic translation which translates the word Elohim as Allah. And he says, see, the word Allah is there. It is in the Bible. Yeah, the Arabic the Arabic translation, just like an English translation says God and a German translation says Gott and so on. It's the translation. But he's saying that is actually the name of Allah there. But what's he saying? IP's pointing out that he must be saying that Elohim is Allah. Allah is Elohim. Elohim is Allah. And so if that's correct, if Elohim is the name of Allah somehow in the Hebrew, guess what? You've just declared that the word Elohim, wherever you find it, actually refers to Allah. And what happens when you go to what happens? But Elohim doesn't just refer to God. It can refer to false gods, demons, all that stuff. And so these are all Allah. So this is Muslim Cowboy. Demons are Allah. Allah is demons.
Yeah. However, also that he would be saying that Allah is a man, specifically the prophet Samuel, because Saul goes to the necromancers and asks them to bring up Samuel so that Saul can talk to Samuel. And what does the necromancer say? I see Allah coming up out of the earth. So apparently Allah is a dead human and also a demon and also the foreign god of Egypt. But it doesn't stop there, because we can also go to 1 Kings 11:3, where we'd have to translate it as they have forsaken me in worship, Ashtoreth, Allah of the Sidonians, Chemosh, Allah of Moab, and Milcom, Allah of the Ammonites. So Allah is also all these pagan deities. Maybe the we passages that he was talking about in those the we passages that he was talking about in the Quran make more sense. Maybe there are multiple Allahs, because also Psalm 82, God is addressing the divine council. I was just about to bring this up. Yeah, Allah has taken place in the divine council. In the midst of the Allahs, he holds judgment. So maybe that's what the we passage in the Quran are referring to. If the Muslim Cowboy is right, and the word Elohim refers to the name Allah.
But just quickly, I know you may not have put it in the slides, but at the end of Psalm 82, it's literally in the Greek Septuagint. It's anastasis, so resurrect Allah, regather the nation. So in other words, Allah is conceived of, for especially Christians who use the Septuagint, as rising up, or in this case, in light of now Jesus, resurrection. So now Allah is resurrected to reclaim the nations. Interesting.
Yeah, it's if this is just follows from his reasoning, is my point. If he says he cares about the original language, if he says that Elohim refers to the name Allah, because he says in his tweets that Allah is the name of God, okay, well then I guess you gotta, every time you see that in the Coptic version, it's probably referring to that. Okay, well, I want to tell you there, that's pretty bad. All right, let me get to some more of these super chats.
In the book of Daniel, especially the Peshitta, in chapter 4, or elsewhere when it speaks about Nebuchadnezzar calling out to Daniel, I see that the spirit of the holy Allah is in you. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yo, IP, just saw your video on if God sends people to hell, and it made a lot of sense. But what's your take on people who have near-death experiences that describe hell a lot different than what you described? I've been vocal on this in the past. I don't think all near-death experiences are necessarily reliable. The only ones I think we can argue for in a testimony type case or testimony type reasoning is ones where they have had out-of-body experiences and can verify things, or if they go to the other side and they get information back they could not have known unless they talked to that dead person, that kind of thing. I'm not convinced that all near-death experiences are reliable. And again, also, if they are, in this case, I could just remain agnostic and not entirely sure, but I don't think they're necessarily biblical. There's other near-death experiences where people have said they've gone to hell and it was just blackness, like Howard Storm, for example. It's not the best that I think we should rely on if we're going to use near-death experiences as part of our case for the supernatural. For the story of the woman caught in adultery, do you think it's likely it's an historical account of circulating around the early church later and added in? So referring to the section in end of John 7 and John 8, what's your take on that, David?
Yeah, so it's a situation. I think there's also a manuscript where it appears in the Gospel of Luke. So yeah, the criticism of the story is not that it's false. The criticism is the claim is that it wasn't originally in the Gospel of John. So yeah, I mean, even the Gospel of John said Jesus did all kinds of things that aren't put here. So yeah, it seems like a story that could have been circulating in. Well, there are a couple different possibilities here. So one possibility would be there was an update of the Gospel of John by the exact same author, right? So you could say, hey, why don't you put that story in there? Okay, I'll add that story in there, something like that. So that's a possibility. Another possibility is that, yeah, you had the Gospel of John. It was written. You had the Gospels are written, but there's this story that's circulating about Jesus. It had become a famous story. And hey, why isn't that in there? And then someone inserts it. But this really goes back to the issue of textual criticism. We can spot these things in the manuscripts of the Bible because we have so many. These books originally circulated as individual books and they get copied and they end up in different areas and so on. When a change occurs, you can spot it. You can compare it with other manuscripts and do textual criticism. And so it's a situation where you can kind of have to look at the evidence and make conclusions. The point is, this isn't something that you'd want to base Christian doctrine on. You wouldn't want to base Christian doctrine on a disputed passage. But I suspect that it was a story that was actually circulating that someone said, hey, this needs to be in there or something.
I honestly thought IP was AP for a good 10 minutes.
I do not know how that would happen.
Look nothing like apostate prophet. I'm much more hideous looking. Hey guys, Hikmah. Where's the Hikmah of the day? Sahih Muslim 146. Let me pull that one up here. I just got it pulled up so I can put it on screen for David to dissect it here. It was narrated on the authority of Ibn Umar that the messenger of Allah observed, verily Islam started as something strange, and it would again revert to its old position of being strange, just that it started and it would recede between two mosques, just as a serpent crawls back into its hole. I love that one.
Yep, Islam's going to crawl back into this hole like a serpent from where it belongs. That's funny. That is what people have been sharing that more recently, and it's like it's one of those hadiths that should get more exposure. There needs to be like a video like the top 10 hadiths that everyone needs to be circulating always, constantly, because that would probably be on a top 10 list.
That's the hadith we should cite when they say Islam's going to take over the world. Just retweet it with that hadith. And
no, it's not. Islam's going to crawl back into the hole it came from.
Obey from David Wood. Maybe if you all had one message that Islam is for the uneducated, the cultural perspective would shift. Just a marketing thought. I mean, I think we've kind of been arguing that. I mean, I'd say the Salafis are really good at doing that for us. I don't know what else to say about that. Yeah. Love your work, Michael, because you do a video about the red heifer prophecy. Many are talking about it, but there's nothing in the New Testament about it. Yeah, that's why I've not really been talking about it. It's just one of those crazy sensationalist thing. I just don't care about. I'll try to see if I can make a video on it. I don't know. It's just one of the things I'm just like, whatever. Like, it's just sensationalist stuff. It's not going to be relevant in a year when nothing happens. It's just the same stuff we deal with all the time, year to year. I translated First Nephi 1 in the Book of Mormon into Arabic and saw the word God turn into Allah. Joseph Smith, peace be upon him, was a true prophet. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Yes, you see?
You've heard it.
Hey, don't tell the Muslim Cowboy I'll actually use that for dawah. You see, even the Mormons knew Allah. You gotta love these guys, man.
How would you explain the Unitarian argument that the Septuagint uses the divine name with a different word compared to John 8:58? Yeah, I go to the Septuagint, go to Psalm 90, verse 2, I believe it is, where it says in there, it says before the mountains were, a couple of other things, and then it says you are. So before the mountains were, you are. That's in Greek, and that is a third person form of what you see in first person in John 8:58. So if Jesus was going to say, before the mountains were, you are, in John 8:58, it would look like what it is in Psalm 92. If God was talking in Psalm 92, it would look exactly like what Jesus said in John 8:58. So that's the one I use when it comes to the Septuagint. And so that's a good way to show that. David, what an IP. I teach 9th and 12th grade Bible. How would you recommend helping young people today better discern between trustworthy info and untrustworthy info? Let's see what I don't know what David has here, but I would say first of all, have people constantly check sources. So when someone sends me another article saying Easter is pagan, I go to the article and I go, it doesn't cite any reputable sources. You just can't send me an article claiming this. Should have primary sources. Have them start tracking down sources. Make sure they're citing people that are actual scholars, and then they just don't believe stuff just because someone makes an argument. Actually put it to the test philosophically. Test their methodology. So start checking sources, start getting into philosophy and learning how to argue for the best explanation, the most parsimonious, and that kind of stuff will be helpful. I don't know what you have to say, David, but you got anything, go for it.
Yeah, I would give lots of examples, right? So I would come into class, either do an entire class on this or multiple classes where just give tons of examples of people saying things in videos and on social media and showing that those things are completely false. So put a claim of someone up on the screen. Look, here's what so-and-so, look, it got 150,000 likes and so on. Here's what happens if we actually do 5 minutes of research on it. See, it turned out to be false. It turned out to be completely false. They need to get it in their minds that social media or videos or anything, people can say almost anything they want. And it's very easy to just make completely false, ridiculous, absurd claims. And so I would show them lots of examples. And then, yeah, exactly what IP said. You've got to train them to say, okay, I can't trust everything that comes up on social media. And therefore I need to develop a habit of saying, what is your source for that? Yeah. And if they can't give a source, keep in mind, not everyone can always give a source. You can learn stuff from other people and not know the exact sources and so on. But if it is correct information, they should be able to trace it back, right? You should be able to look up and find it. If you can't, then guess what? It just happens that someone hears something from someone in 10th grade, and then they share it the rest of their lives, and they share it with a bunch of people, and then it spreads until it becomes a belief that people around the world hold. And anyway, just gotta get it through their heads. Matter of fact, your videos, this would be good for holidays, right? Show people making the claims. Show people making the claims about various holidays, and then show them IP's videos on the subject of what actually happens when you start looking into sources for this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very good to have a skeptical mind and start, questioning stuff you hear, not just believing it. Rob, do you want to share your screen for something?
Oh yeah, you got me on a roll with Psalm 82. Here's the Arabic Bible. Notice that Allah. So here's Allah. If you can see my mouse.
Yeah, I see it.
Stands in the assembly of Allah. Wait, what? Allah stands in the assembly of Allah and judges among the Arabic here is Allah lihat yakdi. Interesting. So Allah stands in his assembly and judges among the Allahs. Or like the Allah, like the other gods, basically. Muslim Cowboy, I dare you not go there, because then you'll have to prove that. Because don't forget, I mean, David is familiar with this. The jinn like to sneak in and have a hearing with the council up there, and no, fiery rockets are sent to like keep them at bay from that council that the angels listen in, and it's no different. That's the point. So don't go there.
Yeah. And if anyone is worried about this from a biblical perspective, because I can already hear Muslims complaining, you see polytheism in the Bible. Check out my video, Polytheism in the Bible. I address that in detail, and I cover Psalm 82, Deuteronomy 32. Rob's got stuff on it as well.
Right. Because see verse 8 down here, Allah is the one that resurrects. That's the whole point of the psalm. So you have Allah standing in El's council. Well, in this case, let me just use Yahweh. So Yahweh or Elohim standing in El's council. So Jesus quotes Psalm 82 in John 10 to argue that he's the one that stands in the council and judges the gods. And then the psalmist ends by saying, oh, now that you judge the sons of the Most High, you will reclaim back the nations. And then the New Testament authors use that to say, yeah, Jesus is that second power who will, and that's Pentecost, right? He reclaims the nations. So.
Yeah. All right, one more super chat, then we're going to go to the next video here. Finally cut, you live IP. You were my first step into intellectual Christianity, and you have helped me a lot with my faith. Really appreciate what you're doing and hope you'll continue this. Thank you very much, David. That means a lot to me. Always happy to hear that kind of stuff. So Very, very much appreciated. All right, so we're now going to enter the realm of philosophy because the Muslim Cowboy thinks he can do philosophy. So let me grab
Well,
the next.
he can do everything else. He knows. He knows the original languages of everything. I don't know. He's an intellectual powerhouse.
And powerhouse, absolutely. So this is his. It's like the tweets I showed you earlier, but this is in a video form.
Here in Saudi Arabia, alhamdulillah, it's Ramadan. I'm in the best place on earth. And guess what? I got a message for you guys. Adam, peace be upon him, the first man, was a Muslim. Prove me wrong.
Evolution.
I pointed this out to him. That's an argument from ignorance. That is a classic example of an argument from ignorance. You start with a claim, you assert its fact, and then you shift the burden of proof on everyone else to prove it wrong. You didn't give any evidence. That's an argument from ignorance. Textbook example.
Yeah, guys, just try to understand what he just did there. I'm going to make a claim. Now, you refute the claim. He didn't. What evidence did he offer? None. He just said it. All he did was say it. So keep in mind. And then what happens if people start trying to respond to you? Then you play skeptic, right? So what if I said Adam was an alien? Prove me wrong. Well, if I'm the one saying Adam is an alien, it seems like it's on me to prove that Adam was an alien, right? But if I say I'm just going to say Adam was an alien, and we'll assume I'm right until you prove me wrong. Now, how would you actually prove me wrong? You can't. If I'm just going to say, nope, you haven't refuted my claim that Adam is an alien. So, guys, this is dawah, right? This is dawah. Muhammad, guys, Muhammad was a Christian. Muhammad was a Christian, a devout Christian who believed that Jesus died on the cross for sins and rose from the dead. And I'm going to say that his message was later corrupted by Uthman. Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Like really, prove me wrong. What are you going to do? You're going to quote sources from 2 centuries after the time? Is that what you're going to do? What Quran do you have from before the time of Uthman that you're going to point to? What are you going to do? What are you going to point to? What information could you possibly point to that would refute my claim? See, the problem is if I wanted to show that Muhammad was a Christian, I would be the one who has to prove it. It's not your job to disprove it. I haven't given you any evidence to disprove. So if it's just, hey, I can say anything I want and you have to disprove, if you have to disprove it, great. I can say that Muhammad was a devout Christian who proclaimed the Trinity. Later on, a guy named Uthman corrupted everything, and then he burned all the true manuscripts of the Quran, which said that Jesus is Lord, who died on the cross for sins and rose from the dead, and proclaimed God as a Trinity. They burned all these manuscripts and then issued a new Quran, which has this Unitarian stuff that you guys now prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. You can't prove it wrong. And somehow, if I were to say that, if I were to make that argument, it would be in their minds that it's kind of weird that he's making the claim and we have to prove it wrong. But when your guys do it, you treat them like heroes. Well, wow, that was powerful, man.
What do you got here, Rob?
So since Cowboy loves old Bibles, let's go to the classic Royal We Bible, shall we? Male and female created he them and blessed them and called their name Adam. Wow. Eve's called Adam too? What's going on here, guys?
Well, it's a term for humanity also. I mean, that's what's going on.
That's what's going on. It's not that Adam is the first man and thereby that's his name. I mean, the anachronisms in the argument is just silly. But yeah, when it comes to Islam and the theology of Islam, like Tawheed and so on, or the Hanif of Abraham, yeah, you need to go to an anthropological council, right? Go and make your peer-reviewed paper to discuss the evolution of hominids and that the Hanif is a concept that goes back into the Pleistocene period. Go for it. I'm willing to pay money to watch that lecture. Josh Swamidas would be very interested in that discussion.
Well, when I pointed out to the Muslim Cowboy on Twitter that he was committing a blatant blatant argument from ignorance. He got a little upset. He said this here that is lovely little. He said, Christians, you really need someone better to represent you. While pretending to be intellectually astute, he actually demonstrated his own lack of understanding of our position as Muslims concerning the belief of the prophet. No, Muslim Cowboy, you committed a blatant argument from ignorance, and I pointed that out. Here it is down here in black. Adam was a Muslim. Now that you were a Christian, prove me wrong. That was your argument. That's all you said. That's a blatant argument from ignorance, regardless of other beliefs you have that you did not present in your argument. He says, our argument has never been, since you can't prove he wasn't a Muslim, therefore he was. Yes, you did. Like, that's literally kind of what you did there. It is that the Creator revealed his final revelation that all the prophets are brothers in faith and come with the same message. The final message was in Arabic. Muslim is just the Arabic language signifier to the same way that was practiced before. Sure it was, buddy. So they called it whatever it was in their language, same as the name for God. Allah has many names, but of certainty, Allah is one of the names of Lord. So there he is saying that Allah is a name of God. Therefore, he has to apply that to every Elohim in the Bible. Or were you witnesses when death approached Jacob, when he said that his sons, what will you worship after me? They said, well, worship your God and the God of your father. So he cites a bunch of different hadiths here, but it doesn't matter. Your argument is still an argument from ignorance, regardless of what you believe. And then I pointed this out to him again, and he got a little mad. He said, Gish Gallop at its finest. Dude, a Gish Gallop is when, as you put down here, it's a rhetorical device in which a person in debate attempts to overwhelm their opponent by providing an excessive number of arguments. I provided one argument, and he felt, I guess, overwhelmed by that because he called it a
One
Gish
is too
Gallop.
many.
It's like, are you like I know what David said earlier about these guys being plants, but when you say stuff like this, it's really hard, or it's really easy to see why people think they're plants. He's calling by one argument a Gish Gallop. Like, what are you doing? You can't make this stuff up.
So think about what the Muslim Cowboys actually saying. So he just says Adam was a Muslim. Prove me wrong. What evidence could there possibly be that Adam was a Muslim? Well, the Quran says it. That's it. That's the extent of your argument. The Quran says it. The Quran also says that the sun sets in a muddy pool. The Quran says that stars are missiles that Allah uses to shoot demons when they try to sneak into paradise. If you're talking about theological stuff, according to the Quran, the Trinity is made up of Allah, Jesus, and Mary, who just work together as three closely linked beings. If you're talking about various beliefs, the Quran also says that Jews call Ezra the son of Allah. I've never been able to find evidence of one Jew anywhere in the world or in history who called Ezra the son of Allah. But it gets worse because according to Muhammad in the Hadith, the main complaint of Allah, the main charge against the Jews on Judgment Day is that they worshipped Ezra. That's the main, according to Muhammad in Sahih al-Bukhari, the main charge against the Jews on the Day of Judgment is going to be, you worshipped Ezra as the son of Allah. And the parallel criticism to Christians is Christians are going to be asked why they worshipped Jesus as the son of Allah. So Jews are doing the exact same thing, but that Christians are doing, but they're doing it with Ezra. Find me a Jew who, one, it's hard to find Jews who know anything about Ezra. They don't focus on Ezra, let alone do they worship him as the son of God. So think about this. Muslim Cowboy, this is how I would go about responding to your claim. You're saying Adam was a Muslim. You're the one making the claim. So if we were to ask you what possible basis could you have for saying that Adam was a Muslim, it's going to be, well, Muhammad said it. That's what your evidence is going to be. Muhammad said it. Okay, Muhammad said all kinds of things that are factually false. So he's a guy you just can't take seriously when he's making claims about the beliefs of people in the past. According to Muhammad, Alexander the Great, who was the most pagan of all pagans, you can't possibly, on the pagan scale, you can't possibly be more pagan than Alexander the Great. According to the Quran, he's a devout Muslim too. So wait, if the Quran will take a devout pagan and call him a Muslim, what should we think if Adam is also called a Muslim? He's called a Muslim by a guy who just doesn't know anything about history. So sorry, you fail again.
Yeah, and
Stick
to
riding horses. Stick to riding horses, sport.
Then of course Ijaz decided he was going to come in and step in on this, and this one really made me laugh. To be,
That's
he
another.
says,
By
our
the way,
Christian-
that's another compulsive liar right there.
oh, for sure.
There, all the Dawa guys will lie in a heartbeat. Ijaz, he's one. Yeah, he's beyond. He goes above and beyond.
Yeah. So here's what he says here. He says, are Christians comfortable with pseudo-intellectuals engaging in embarrassing posts like this? What, stating a fact? To begin with, this is a misuse of referring to the fallacy of the argument from ignorance, and is its own fallacy known as appeal to fallacy. It's not a fallacy to point out when you see a fallacy, Jazz. That should be blatantly obvious. This is because the Muslim Cowboy is correct in saying that the first man, Adam, could not have been a Jew, ethnically or theologically, nor a Christian, which necessarily follows from the claim. Mike is trying to say that Muslim Cowboy is arguing fallaciously because he thinks the argument is because you cannot disprove that Adam was not a Muslim. It proves that he was a Muslim. Muslim Cowboy literally said blatantly that Adam is a Muslim and we have to somehow prove him wrong. That is an argument from ignorance because you are shifting the burden of proof. That's just obvious.
Adam is an Australian. Prove me wrong.
Prove Rob wrong. Adam is not an Australian. If
Adam is squishy. Prove me wrong.
Dead serious. Muslims of the world. If you take this guy, if you take that argument seriously, Rob just said Adam was an Australian. Prove him wrong. So
the irony.
Start thinking.
The irony is
put together your arguments.
The irony is that the Aborigines in Australia were the first astronomers. It's going back 60,000 years ago. That's around the time when you have the migration out of Africa period and so on. So I'm closer to. I'm actually more in line with the anthropologists that Adam was an Australian Aborigine than you saying he was a Muslim. Anyway, that's
yeah. Well, then Ijaz just lies, says that wasn't his argument. That literally was his argument. We can all see it on screen. He says his argument is that among Jewish, Christian, and Muslim beliefs of Adam, neither Judaism nor Christianity consider him to have believed in or practiced some form of either formal Judaism or Christianity, both of which were introduced after the time of Adam. Whereas Muslims believe he did believe in or practice some form of Islam from the very beginning. Well, that's stupid, but that wasn't his argument. His argument was literally objectively claiming that Adam was a Muslim and we have to prove him wrong. He didn't say, we Muslims believe that Adam was a Muslim. If he would have said that, I would have ignored the stupid post. Muslim Cowboy said, Adam was a Muslim, prove me wrong. This just shows a poor grasp of logic. So what Ijaz has got to do is he's got to lie, pretend that Muslim Cowboy didn't say what he obviously said, and then just sort of pretend we're the ones who don't know what we're talking about. It's this constant lying, this sleight of hand motion where you switch out the actual argument. It's like, dude, like, we can all see the argument. He didn't say this. He didn't have this extended commentary of just these lies here. We saw his argument, but when you're in Dawah, ladies and gentlemen, this is what you got to do. You got to pretend that you didn't lie. You didn't make a fallacious argument. And then your Muslim brothers will just circle the wagons for you. Welcome to Dawah. All right, with that, let's get to some more super chats here since these are starting to pile up. All right, we got, hey guys, fun hadith. The number of stones used at the end of defecation must be odd. Sahih Muslim 2, 463. Sahih Bukhari 14162. Let me see if I can pull some of these up here.
You know, it's just you got to wipe yourself within with an odd number of stones. And there's all kinds of these things in the Muslim sources just make it look like Muhammad had some sort of like obsessive compulsive disorder or something like that.
Yeah, odd. Yeah, here it is, odd number. You should do so with an odd number of like why? Like what?
I've never actually asked a Muslim, but I've wondered, like, how do you apply this in an age of toilet paper? Do you like count out like the number of little sheets? Like, okay, here's 7. Let me go with seven little sheets or something like that. Or do you grab like 3 bundles? You know what I mean? Like, in other words, do you count up the number of little squares of toilet paper and say, okay, 7 or 9 or 11 or something like that? Or do you say, okay, you know, I got one bunch. Now I got to grab another bunch, then a third bunch, so that it's always an odd number. I don't know. Maybe Muslims who are watching can actually fill me in. Unless they just don't take the stuff, unless they don't take the commands of their prophet seriously at all.
Yeah, well, I would, I would just say they're too late. I mean, honestly, the Hadiths are like, what, 200 some years? I mean, could you imagine if the Gospels were written in the time of origin? I mean, that atheists would have a field day with how unreliable they are. That's like basically where the Hadiths date to in terms
Well,
of
they
distance to
mock
Muhammad.
the Gospels from being a few decades later, and it's like,
Yeah.
wait, a few decades you think is a problem? That's within the lifetimes of people who are still alive. Your Hadith collections are centuries after the events, and you treat those as good as gold. That's just weird.
Double standard. Yek for Life says Yeks for Rob and IP. Very much appreciated. And as I have said before, I'm not like big on attacking young Earth creationists. My whole goal on this channel has just been to show that you can be a Christian and be a theistic evolutionist. It's not that you're required to. It's not that you should take this view. I'm just like, look, let's just show that this is not heretical and we can all be Christians and say the Nicene Creed and it's all good. That's been one of my goals.
I consider young Christians my brothers and sisters in Christ. Unfortunately, I've had young Christians say that I'm living in sin for being a theistic evolutionist, but I don't give that back in return back to them. But I will critique the ideas of the model per se. Yeah.
So you heard it here, folks. Rob is better than you because you say mean things about him and he doesn't.
David, have you seen the Lutheran Satires video, A Latter-day Regift, comparing Muhammad with Joseph Smith?
No,
I have not.
I remember the famous Lutheran. What is it? Horace Saves Christmas or something like that.
Oh yes.
I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah, I've not. Yeah, I've not seen that one. Unfortunately, I could have swore I've seen all his videos, but it's very old. Yeah, I've not seen that one, but it's I'll check it out later today. I don't know. You want me to play it now? It's like 6 minutes long.
I'm okay with you playing it now.
Let me
11 years ago. That is old school, man.
That is very old school. Yeah, let me pull this up here. We'll just play.
That's back in my prime, man.
Let's see.
I was making this back in my prime before most of you were even born.
What's up, man? Pazuzu, what's up, man? What?
Well, don't you remember what today is?
Arbor Day?
It's my birthday. Did you forget?
No, I was just seeing if you forgot.
So, did you give me what I asked for? You know, a brand new false religion with which I could deceive countless American souls. Did you get that for me?
Yep.
Really?
Uh-huh.
So you didn't just totally forget about it, and now you're going to repackage some old heresy and try to pass it off as something new?
No way, bro.
Awesome! So can you tell me what this completely new religion is like?
Sure. So this religion is centered around like a supposedly illiterate prophet who goes off by himself to pray about the religious unrest in his day.
Yes.
And this prophet is visited by an angel who tells him that the one true religion has been lost and that the prophet needs to reclaim it.
This is starting to sound familiar.
Then, in a way that's completely and deliberately unverifiable, God reveals a new holy book to the prophet that's called
the Quran?
No, it's called the Book of Mormon.
And what does this book teach about the Bible?
It teaches that the Bible used to be true, but then a bunch of Christians changed what it originally said, even though, of course, there's no evidence for that ever happening.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've heard this before. And what does this religion teach about the Trinity?
That it's a lie invented by the Christian church.
And what does it say about how we're saved by grace through faith in Jesus?
That it's a lie invented by the Christian church.
And what does this book teach about good works?
That your good works get you into heaven, but there's like a bunch of different levels of heaven, and that like the highest level is reserved for those people who have lived the lives of like the most perfect submission
to God's will? Yeah, I'm pretty sure this religion already exists.
What? Dude, no, it's like totally new.
Really? Is there any chance that this religion is pro-polygamy?
Yes.
And what are the odds that after the death of the prophet, there will be a split between people who want to follow his blood relative and those who want to follow another guy.
Approximately 100%.
And I'm guessing that this religion will alter its theology when it becomes politically expedient to do so.
You guessed correctly.
Okay, this is obviously that same religion you invented in the 7th century. What are you going to tell me next? That the name of this religion's prophet is going to be Mohammed?
White people are never gonna follow a guy named Muhammad. No, we need to think of like a really white name. What's the whitest name you could think of?
Walter Peters.
No.
Douglas Mayflower.
No.
George Winchester.
No.
Hunter Billingsley.
No.
Franklin Peabody III.
No.
Philip Clark.
No.
Clark Phillips.
No.
Wilson Phillips.
No.
Peter Waffleton.
No.
Jeffrey Mustard.
Nah.
Brian Pudding.
No.
Wilbur Milk.
No.
Trevor Lillyblossom.
No.
Stuart Wigby.
Nerp.
Kip Sweatervest.
No.
Chip Whistler.
Nope.
Joseph Smith.
Oh, that's the whitest name I've ever heard. Hey, man, let's go find you a Joseph Smith. Happy birthday, bro.
Wait, let's go to the, he always does parts at the end. Let's see here.
Before the world was made.
Hold on.
Chance that this religion teaches that before the world was made, there were all these souls in heaven that would one day have human bodies, and that they all agreed to be Muslims/Mormons.
Of course not. That's ridiculous. This religion teaches that before the world was made, there were all these souls in heaven that would one day have human bodies, but only 1/3 of them agreed to be like really good Mormons. And the other third that rebelled didn't even get bodies. They became demons.
What about the last third?
Oh, you mean the ones that were like, oh yeah, we'll follow you, God, but then they were like totally lazy about it?
Yes. What did they become?
Black people.
Oh boy, powerful stuff right there. That was pretty good. I'm glad we watched that. That's I can't believe I've never seen that one.
Yeah, you know, it'd have been funny if while he's going through the names, he was like Michael Jones.
It's another good one. That would have been perfect. Random question. Are the 3 branches of government a good analogy for the Trinity? It's from Sheikh Wingeling. Obviously, we see Mike Winger is converted to Islam.
It's exactly the sort of question you'd expect from a heretical Wingeling.
I wouldn't use it necessarily because you're basically it'd be more aligned with tritheism. Get different people in there. Again, I think you had to use a mental analogy like I've given before, like in sci-fi movies, like when you have one being that is multiple persons. I mean, you could see that in like Inception. You can see that in Moon Knight. Those are the analogies that I think are the best to use. But again, they're not perfect. I wouldn't say that's exactly what the Trinity is.
Yeah, and if at best, I think you could use that as an illustration of something that is one in one sense and more than one in another sense, and say, okay, well, you know, it's one government in one sense, but it's 3 different branches in another sense. So it's an example, which we have tons of things that you can use examples of that are one in one way and more than one in another way. One that I've wanted to kind of flesh out at some point, especially if you're talking to Muslims, is how they claim there's only one Quran and yet there are all these different qira'at. And so there are actually a ton of different ones that you can use using the Quran as an example, because, you know, individual chapters of the Quran, what are they? They're the speech of Allah. What is the entire Quran? It's the speech of Allah. So it's one in one way, more than one in another way. But with the different qira'at, they're maintained that all of these somehow go back. They don't believe that these are like textual mistakes or something like this, that someone made an error at some point in one of these variants. They believe that these all go back to the primordial Quran, and that they're somehow all the same, and yet they're different, and yet they're all one. So I think there are plenty of issues to push if you're talking about how to give a good example to Muslims.
I'll go to you in a second here, Rob. Just want to get this one before I miss it. Muslim
no
Cowboy
worries.
shorts are pretty pathetic dawa. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I think it's great. I hope he keeps doing this. This is a great material, and I will be using him for content creation definitely in the future, given that he doesn't understand.
You'll probably have to have one of these live streams like every couple months to go through the latest stupid claims of the Muslim Cowboy.
What do you got here, Rob?
I want to argue, all right, to prove me wrong, David and Mike,
All right.
that Muhammad deserves a Nobel Prize in anthropology. Okay? He argues that Allah created Adam in his picture 60 cubits, or about 30 meters in height. Okay? And not just that, but whoever will enter paradise will be of the shape and picture of Adam. And not just that, since the creation of Adam's offspring, since Adam, their stature has diminished continuously to the present time. So in other words, we've been progressively devolving in stature. The question is, when was Adam created? Muhammad doesn't give a time frame. The Quran or Islam doesn't give a time frame. So could we do a linear progression algorithm? So is this a log scale? Is this what sort of scale are we using here? Are we using the Semitic cubit? Is that the way we measure things? What about the meter, the foot? Does Allah work in those terms? There's just so many questions. But Muhammad got it right. What
you would say based on this, Rob? I mean, matter of fact, if you don't do it, I'll do it. You could put this hadith, because this is one of, I can only think of 2 hadiths where it talks about Adam being created, or man being created in the image of God, because they're not big on that, and they're not clear on what it means. Like here, it seems to mean like shape, like his same shape and his same height. Yeah. That's what it sounds like in context. So my response, unless you want to do it, Rob, is go to the Muslim Cowboy's tweet of Adam was a Muslim, prove me wrong, is just going to be Allah is 90 feet tall, prove me wrong, and just cite this hadith.
And not just that, I've even read actual PhD dissertations by Muslims who can't help but see the hijab language in Surah 42, Ayah 50, that Allah has a hijab in front of him, and that therefore, that there are hadith that speak about where Muhammad goes and sees Allah, and that he looks like a young man with a golden face. I mean, you have this language. So, yeah, maybe Allah is a 90-foot human of some form.
Hot young man.
For sure.
Hey, you could put one of those passages up and say, Allah's super sexy young guy, prove me wrong.
What do you guys say when people say Jesus taught reincarnation and there was a sect that taught it? There is no evidence for that. The early Jews did not believe in that. Second Temple Jews did not believe in that. We've got no evidence of that. People try to cherry pick parts out of the gospel. I think John specifically to make that argument. Commentators just don't even entertain that because it's not at all what's going on in early Jewish
I've seen some
theology.
I've seen some of the Black Hebrew Israelites try to argue it, but they'll argue it based on like John the Baptist being somehow the second the second appearance of Elijah and stuff, and say it's actual reincarnation. He was reincarnated and so on. It's not something, if you weren't trying to put that idea in there, you wouldn't think that it's talking about reincarnation at all. But yeah, they read that into certain Bible passages.
Yeah, it's just ignoring the cultural context and applying modern concepts onto the text. Hey, IP, I was wondering, how do you answer to the argument that Jesus wasn't dead for 3 days? How do you explain the concept of days in the Jewish culture? Oh, good question. I'm going to do I'll have a video up on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, I believe on Thursday on this. So in the Talmud, Rabbi Eliezer ben Azara said a day and a night are an ona, and a portion of an ona is as the whole. So they would say if you got a day and a night and you just got a portion of that, you can treat it as the whole day, as the whole 24-hour period. You see this in the book of Esther. Esther says, I will fast for 3 days and 3 nights, and then I'll go to see the king Ahasuerus. But what does it say? It says in Esther 5:1, on the third day she went. So she didn't wait. She didn't go on the fourth day. She went on the third day. You see it in Matthew. The chief priests quote Jesus and they say, we remember him saying that after 3 days he would rise. Can the tomb be made secure until the third day? So again, same kind of concept. So that's how you kind of see that. R.T. France, Harold Honer pointed that out in their books. Check out the book Chronological Aspects of the Life of Christ. I think it was written in the 70s. But I'll have a short on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter on that on Thursday, because I'm responding to someone arguing Jesus was crucified on Wednesday, which is just ridiculous. And so fortunately I got to do that, even though I kind of like the guy. I think he's very nice. But yeah,
my favorite argument is Jacob and Laban in Genesis. The text literally says Jacob drove the sheep 3 days. And then, I mean, the text obviously includes that they had to rest and all that, right? The mating and all that. Now, 3 24-hour periods, literally, like drove them? No, that's a text showcasing the very practical nature of the language. So 3 day, 3 night, with respect to the death and resurrection, is, don't take it like 24-hour, distinct 24-hour periods.
Yeah. So you have the position, and this is what, I mean, Josh McDowell pointed out back in the day, that you have the position that any part of a day was treated as an entire day. And then you have like Mike Lacona. Mike Lacona argues that it was just a kind of idiom, that it's like we use few, like they use like 3 days. And because you see it in the Gospels, you'll say on the third day or after 3 days. And it seems to just use these things as interchangeable, when after 3 days and on the third day would be different things for us, because after 3 days would be on the fourth day and so on. So Mike Lacona argues that it's just like an idiom. It's similar to how we use few. It's not an exact time. It's not an exact time period.
In fact, where the Gospels do go into very specific notions of a day, because don't forget the Gospels are written in the Greco-Roman context, they actually use the Roman watch at the first watch, second watch, third watch. Like, notice, it's not dealing with a Semitic view of Yom. You try and understand that the New Testament authors are actually thinking more in like Roman watches. And then, as David pointed out, then they include the idiom usages of, like 3 days and all that.
Yeah. With Muslim Cowboy, I'm legit confused if he actually is that stupid to believe his own arguments or just a total liar. It hurt my brain to listen. Yeah, I was wondering the same thing when I saw him on the argument from ignorance thing, or him putting the Bible up and not reading the other half of the page, or even that video that we've responded to in the past where he pulls up a Bible and he goes, according to Genesis 21, he starts flipping through pages. According to Genesis 21 and 22, Rebecca was 3 when she married Isaac. And he can't take 5 minutes to look down at the page and see that isn't in there. That Rebecca's not even mentioned in one of the chapters. She's just mentioned in, like, I think the end of 22, just briefly. And it doesn't say she was 3 when she married Isaac. And so, like, I responded to him on that. And, like, it's like, dude, like, how do you miss this stuff? Like, you got to do better. Just so you represent the human race better at the end of the day. Like, geez. Hey, David, where can I find sources where Muhammad sits on Allah's throne and Muhammad can't be called a black man? That's on you. I don't know what that is.
Not calling Muhammad a black man, that's Qadi Iyad's. That's basically, it gives rulings on Sharia. And yeah, it says that to call Muhammad, if anyone says Muhammad is a black man, he is to be put to death. As far as Muhammad sitting on Allah's throne, yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up.
Can all you guys get together and make a video on the disciples of Jesus versus the followers of Muhammad and how they practice their faith afterwards? I'd have to look more into that. David would know more about the followers of Muhammad than I would.
Someone, I don't remember if this was the same person requesting it, but yeah, I got a request. I think it was yesterday, for comparing the disciples of Jesus and the disciples of Muhammad. And I thought that was that's an interesting request, right? Like, let's look at what these followers were like. Let's look at what the followers of Jesus were like and what the followers of Muhammad were like, because Jesus followers, as far as these guys, when these guys are signing up, they thought they were signing up for war, right? They're signing on with the Messiah, who's going to go crush everyone, and we're going to be with him. We're going to be part of this, and they're ready to get violent real quick. And then Jesus tells them, "Hey, no, put your sword away. That's not how we're doing this here." And so they preach peacefully compared to Muhammad's disciples, who just bloodbath after bloodbath after bloodbath, and then they have slaughtering each other. You had Aisha, who's Muhammad's wife, Aisha, whose title in Islam is Mother of the Faithful, march an army out against Ali, Muhammad's son-in-law, whose title in Islam is the Commander of the Faithful. So you had the Mother of the Faithful send an army, march with an army against the Commander of the Faithful, and about 10,000 Muslims died in bloody combat, slaughtering each other over a disagreement. And so big differences. But think, why did they, even Muhammad's own companions, settle their differences through violence? Because of the example they had. Muhammad settled his disagreements with violence. Jesus didn't. You see the impact that it had on his followers.
My worst nightmares in the chat. Beardless IP is here. Ugh, terrifying to look at. Ooh, yeah, sorry you guys had to see that.
Like a 4-year-old.
Adam was a Muslim before Islam was invented, a Palestinian. If he was a Muslim, Eve would have not had the freedom to eat the forbidden fruit. It's a good point. Thank you for the super chat, Thomas. Guys, remember IP's Pastivate, Adam, and Virgin Dust? What is that referring to? I'm not sure what that's referring to. Sorry, Mother Queen. Maybe you could mention something in the chat, because you have to mention who the debate with. I could think better of that, because my last debate was with Tahir Nasser, who's the Ahmadi Muslim on the swoon theory, and so we debated that back in February. So I'm not sure which one you're referring to. I've done a bunch of debates. Prophet David, I believe. How did you stay calm while Edisham was lying nonstop and was intentionally dishonest? It was painful to watch, felt like torture. I watched like the first half hour of that. How'd the rest of that go?
It's pretty much the same. It kept being situations where he would go, look, it says right here, 2 Peter 1:16, we have not followed cleverly devised fables. So clearly, whoever the author is, because we don't know, is saying that Paul's version of Christianity is fake, and the cleverly devised fables are about Jesus' resurrection. And so they're saying they're not following. And so I would say, okay, we'll just go over to chapter 3 right here, where it affirms Paul. So you're saying it's attacking Paul in chapter 1 and then defending him in chapter 3. What's going on here? But it kept being that sort of situation where, as long as if you keep reading, it completely refutes the claim that he was making. But no, evidence-based. I'm pretty calm, and I always think long term. So I'm just trying to sow some seeds of helping a person to think through his claims a bit more. So, you want to keep the discussion going and kind of, hey, what happens if you were to actually keep reading a little bit right there? Hey, and then a few minutes later, hey, okay, so you said this. All right, now what would happen if you kept reading a little more there? Because it was like he was citing in Galatians 1, where Paul says that he got this by revelation, saying, see, Paul doesn't verify his stuff historically. He just gets everything by revelation. I was like, okay, well, let's keep reading through chapter 1. I said, let's start where you were and just keep reading up into chapter 2, right? Where Paul says that he went up to the apostles in Jerusalem to say, hey, does this line up with what you guys are teaching? And he was ready to say, if my revelations don't line up with what you were taught from Jesus, I'm going to consider that I've been listening to some false nonsense here. So Paul did verify stuff. Anyway, it's a situation like that. But yeah, there's obviously way more stuff to jump on. I mean, pretty much any claim a Dawa guy makes about Jesus or the apostles or Paul or something like this, you could jump all over and spend the entire time. My inclination is to kind of let them talk and then pick something that should be even obvious to them, that like you have a flawed methodology there, and then to keep it going. And I've invited Etisham to come back on. And so since we had a friendly discussion, then he'll be back on, and then he's going to give evidence for Islam. So that should be fun.
Yeah, that's always my mentality. I'm friendly with them, or they're friendly with me. People like the Muslim Cowboy can't do that, apparently. Rob, have you introduced David and Mike to the discovery about the proto-evangelium of James and the Quran regarding Mary in the temple?
Ooh, no, maybe. Well, David, I think I did, but in a different discussion somewhere, maybe in private. But Surah 3 mentions the House of Imran, right? Interestingly, and this is something I didn't know, and it's not connected to this. This is sort of I'm going to respond to that Rebecca age thing. This is what I'm showing my screen. But before I show this, basically in Surah 3, what I found fascinating is that Mary is discussed as being, a virgin in the temple, and Joseph is not yet on the scene. And don't forget, the Quran doesn't actually mention that.
Yeah,
it just says.
Yeah, by the way, do you have any theories about do you have any theories about that? Like, my theory is, like, this goes back to the psychology of Muhammad, that he just ended up with a problem with father figures in general. Like, Allah's not a father. Because I did an entire couple part series. I never actually finished the series. I need to go back and redo it all as one long video. But where it was amazing, because Anthony Rogers is the one who pointed it out. He showed me the book, The Faith of the Fatherless, which is about atheists, right? And atheists who have bad relationships with their fathers, then having problems with God as a father figure, and so on, and all the issues. And then at the very end of the book, this psychologist, Paul Vitz, makes the point. He says, it may be wondering if having bad or absent fathers leads towards atheism, then why is atheism kind of a recent development? And why? Because there's always been bad or dead fathers and so on. So what's the issue here? And he says, in the past, it would have been expressed differently, because atheism wasn't a live option in the ancient world. Or so he says it would have been expressed differently. And he says how this would have been expressed before atheism becomes a thing. It would have been expressed by people rebelling against their own society and their own culture. They would have had problems forming long-term, healthy relationships, and they would have a problem with father figures, and especially with viewing God as a heavenly father. And I'm looking at that in the book. He's talking about atheism. It has nothing to do with Islam. And it's like, wait a minute, the guy rebels against his own culture. He's going to have a problem forming healthy relationships, and he's going to have a serious problem viewing with father figures and with viewing God as a heavenly father. And that's like, in the Quran, it's like the worst thing you can do. When they say Allah has a son, the universe is about to split apart and fall apart. And so this goes back to every father figure Muhammad has for the first 8 years of his life dies. He loses them all by age 8. He's lost every father figure he's ever had. And then you see it's exactly what Paul Vitz said would happen with someone with those characteristics. And so it's just amazing that, I mean, in Surah 33, verse 6, it originally said that Muhammad's wives are their mothers and he's a father to them. But then later that gets changed to just they're the mothers, but they have no father. And then, I mean, Muhammad had an adopted son named Zayd, but then that adoption gets abolished. It's like, hey, I didn't get a father, so you don't get a father either, Zayd. And so you see this over and over again, and it's just you get down to here, and then you have the stories of Mary and Joseph, which end up in the Quran, which are in earlier works, and Joseph's there, but whoever writes the Quran erases Joseph from all these stories. And it's just like, this guy actually like have a bigger problem with father figures in general than anyone else in history, to where he has to like erase them. It's wild stuff. Anyway, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Now, we all go down the whole, like, Muhammad confused the Miriam of Jesus with the Miriam of Moses and Aaron. And sure enough, that is a legit issue, right? Because Surah 19 mentions Moses being the brother of Aaron and Mary being the sister of Aaron. So that's an anachronistic issue. But what I find to be much more fascinating, and in fact much more damning than that, is this ayah in Surah 3. Because it says, these accounts about Zechariah and Mary and the angels talking to her, which is earlier in the chapter, notice very specific the language. These accounts are from the unseen. Okay? So think about this psychologically. My sort of what my response back to you, David, would be, this is something I've been formulating myself. Muhammad may actually be presuming or making this argument, maybe from thin air, but to whoever's listening to him, that, hey, Muhammad, where are you getting these stories about Mary being fed in the temple and Zechariah? Well, here's the argument. They ultimately come from the unseen. You weren't there to see what was happening when she was fed in the temple, right? You weren't witnesses in that moment. And so, which we, in this case the royal we, right? So Allah revealed to you, and you were not with them when they were casting lots to see which of them would take charge of Mary's care, nor were you with them when they were contending. Now notice notice how this is really damning, because if this is from the unseen, that means this is some sort of unique story that not even the New Testament writers were aware of, which means this is some sort of special knowledge, and it's like a litmus test to verify if the Quran indeed comes from, the divine. Well, Gabriel Reynolds points out that, so it's something like a flashback, right? When Zachariah was chosen to be Mary's guardian and all that. The word translated here as lots is generally understood as pens. And Jalalain relates that men cast quills into water to choose who would have the custody of Mary and all that, right? But how ironic, when we have the Apocrypha and the Nag Hammadi library and the Gnostic text and the Pseudepigrapha, when we have all of that suddenly just come to light, how is that coming from the unseen anymore? It's not, because it's as plain as day. So Reynolds says, the Quran is following the chronology of Mary's life as found in the Proto-Evangelion of James. The contest is over who will marry Mary and involves not pens but rods or reeds. The Arabic aklam comes from the Greek kalamos, and it is a kalamos or reed that soldiers put in the right hand of Christ in Matthew 27. Now let's read the passage and see if it flows exactly like what you see in Ayah 44. Joseph drew down his axe, went out to meet them, and when they were gathered together, they took the rods and went to the high priest. The priest took the rods from them and entered the temple and prayed. When he had finished the prayer, he took the rods, went out again, and gave them to them. But there was no sign on them. Joseph received the last rod, and behold, a dove came out of the rod and flew onto Joseph's head. And the priest said to Joseph, Joseph, to you has fallen the good fortune to receive the virgin of the Lord. Take her under your care. The same Proto-Evangelion speaks about Mary in the temple. That's what Reynolds brings out earlier in this particular commentary. So, in other words, Surah 3 is heavily reliant, like, see, again, he's quoting Proto-Evangelion over here, it's heavily reliant on this apocryphal work about Mary. So therefore, how can this be from Allah when it's clearly an imaginative work just a couple of centuries prior to Muhammad? Or is Allah a fan of this particular work? In other words, is Allah putting his stamp of approval that, hey, the author of the Proto-Evangelion of James actually got it right? Like, which one is it? So, now, just a side point with the Rebecca thing, because it's such a nonsense argument.
It's just a super nonsense argument that you have to refute like once a month because they refuse to let the Rebecca argument die.
You have rabbinic Jews saying she died at 133 years old, which then goes down this so-called argument that she was 3 when she married, right? The Book of Jubilees is a BC period work, predates, say the 1st century, and in itself says that Rebecca died 3 Jubilees and 1 week and 1 year on that night. I mean, there's an emphasis on the word Jubilee there because guess what? Hence it's called the Book of Jubilees. And that's the calendar by which this author of Jubilees, utilizes. So when you look at the commentaries and you see what this actually means, guess what? She dies at the age of 155. And the commentator says, so she died at the age of 155, 5 years before Isaac's death, this determining that her age when she married was 20 years old. Not 3, 20, according to the Book of Jubilees, which is centuries before the rabbinic stuff. So so Genesis is silent on her age. You have a Second Temple text, which is more important to us than some rabbinic tale centuries later, which is closer to time of Muhammad, and that Muhammad ironically borrows from in a lot in the Quran. Jubilee says 20, so stop this argument that she's 3.
They're never going to stop it. They're never. They live by it. They never fact check that. They'll use it. I've caught some Muslims using it, and then like 3 months later, I see them using it again after I debunked it. It's just they can't help themselves. And humans,
yeah, and so much for a 3-year-old Rebecca running around having an adult conversation. Hey, do you want some water? And it just
they're not thinking. You can't use logic. They've been brainwashed to use the Rebecca is 3 argument over and over again to try to pretend that Muhammad's a non-exclusive pedophilia is okay. In humans, one body is made up.
The principle.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, and the principle is always the same. If you tell the truth about our prophet, we'll lie about yours. See?
Yeah. All right, for Michelle, in humans, one body is made of multiple parts: heart, brain, 2 lungs, multiple organs with different functions. One God, one person, made in 3 parts: Father, Son, and Spirit, all different. Yeah, that sounds like partialism to me. I'd be very cautious with that analogy. We don't want to say that the Trinity, the persons of the Trinity, are parts of God. The Father is fully God, the Son is fully God, the Spirit is fully God. It's not that they are 3 parts. So be careful with that analogy. I get what you're trying to say. I appreciate it, but just be careful that you had the caveat. This is not a perfect understanding what we mean by the Trinity. It could gravitate closer to partialism.
Yeah, and like I said, just be careful at the beginning to say I'm not saying this is like the Trinity, because it's not like the Trinity. This is just yet another illustration of how something can be one in one sense and more than one in another sense. But the Trinity is significantly different from this, and then you're kind of okay using.
Yeah. Mike, what is a good philosophical reason to provide Muslims who are exposed to extra Quranic texts in their Quran and then claim that those texts must therefore be true or inspired by Allah? What do you say to that, David?
A good philosophical reason to provide Muslims who are exposed to extra Quranic texts in their Quran and then claim that those texts must therefore be true or inspired by Allah.
I'm not sure what this is actually asking. Sorry, Farmhouse.
Yeah, I can interpret this in 2 different ways. So I'm not sure what you're referring to. Like for instance, like Surah 5 verse 32 it quotes the Talmud. So what are you saying? Like, or you have other stories like the stories about Jesus and stuff, and we know where these are coming from. And so are you saying, like, if a Muslim said, if you quote the Quran to a Muslim and then you say, hey, we know where this story comes from. This comes from the Arabic infancy gospel or something like this. And they'll say, well, that must have been inspired too. Is that what you're saying? Or
I'll translate for Farmhouse, because her and I have been doing a whole series. We've now finished Surah 9. Basically, like Ur of the Chaldeans, the fire, like Abraham saved from the fire. Now, the Quran actually says that Allah told the fire, be cool and be a tranquility for Abraham, and then you save, right? And then this whole notion of Abraham destroying the idols, and that's not only in the Book of Jubilees, by the way, the idol destroying, but Jerome in his Latin Vulgate mistranslates Ur as igni, Latin for fire, and then a whole legend comes out of that.
Yeah,
Abraham was saved from the fire. So the point is, you have the Quran, and my hypothesis, and it's the more I read through it, the more my hypothesis seems true, that Muhammad, or the author or authors of the Quran, is only sticking with material in the Common Era period. That's my hypothesis. I don't think the Quran's dealing with anything in the BC period. So what is a good philosophical reason to provide Muslims who are exposed to extra Quranic texts, like Proto-Evangelion I just brought up, in the Quran, and then claim that those texts must therefore be true or inspired? So you guys are the philosophers, not me. So what would be the philosophical, like?
I would say the obvious would just be to go to the books that they say those must have been inspired. So go to the Arabic infancy gospel and start reading, right? Go to any of these texts.
Yeah.
None of these texts line up with Islam.
But David, just quickly, what about the claim that the Quran itself makes, produce a surah like this, or produce 10 surahs like this, or ayahs like this? And the irony is, I can do that. Like, Adam, Iblis prostrating Adam. Hey, I can actually produce a surah like that because that's in the life of Adam and Eve. I don't know. Like, I don't know if that answers the question, but
I think
Yeah.
we got it. But yeah, I would say philosophical reason. If you're going to take that route, I mean, just show the inconsistencies with the texts are citing and how they're not, like as David said, they're not in line with what Islam taught. I mean, that'd be the way to go. Son of Yusuf Estes equals liar. I know who Yusuf Estes is. I don't know who the son of is though. Who? Not sure who that is. IP kind of unrelated. Who's his son of Yusuf Estes equals liar.
Yeah, I don't know who his son is.
IP kind of unrelated, but how's Ben Stanhope? I haven't seen his stuff in a while. Also, can you debate him on Genesis 6:1-4? Because you're obviously wrong. The part about that part about you being is just a joke. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I've not talked to him in a while. I messaged him a while ago. He never got back to me. So just trying to ask him some questions on some theological things or textual things. And I don't know, he's doing his own thing. So I haven't had contact with him for a while. So can't really give you much. David, have you noticed that the purification laws in the Quran are not related to the adherents' access to sacred space? How does it compare to the biblical and ancient Near Eastern customs related to purification?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
Rob, you probably know more about this, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not related. Yeah, well, okay. So, for example, in Surah 3, at the end of Surah 3, somewhere in Surah 3, it speaks about, say, Allah being the best baptizer. Allah is able to baptize the best. Now, when you look at the tafsirs, the Arabic there means to dye, like to dip. Interestingly, baptism, as we understand as Christians, and especially pre-Christian, baptism being a ritual purity sort of thing. And when you go back to sacred space, which, Mike, you've touched on this in all your, the Genesis series, when you're talking about sacred space stuff and how that transfers over to what Jesus provides for us. We are able to, through Christ, now enter sacred space without being, so I think what she's asking is, have you noticed that the purification laws in the Quran are not related to what was unanimously known in the ancient Near East, and then the Bible's engagement with that, and that is this notion of the gods, their sacred, that like you're standing on holy ground right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how Jesus now cleans that up perfectly. So the Muslims have a dilemma. How do we enter Allah's sacred space if there's no mediator? How does that operate? Like, does he just do it just because? But at the same time, how interesting, the Quran says Allah is the best one at coloring or baptizing. But hang on, as a Christian, I can give you the mechanism of this was washed, like our robes are now washed white. It's righteousness language. I can give you the answer, the mechanism of how it's possible as a Christian. It's the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. What is Allah's mechanism is really the question, and it's a question given to Muslims specifically.
Let me get this one up here. Thank you, David, for gifting 20 Inspiring Philosophy memberships. That's very, very generous of you. And Zane for gifting 10 Inspiring Philosophy memberships. Much appreciated. I believe those are randomly distributed. Christian says, thank you guys for your work. Praise Jesus. Thank you for the super chat. Then we have Mother Queen updating apostate mommy, updating earlier comment on the debate. She says, yes, your debate review with Nasser, talking about the whole, I think that was something David said in our debate review with Apostate Prophet on my channel, where you guys talked about like comparing like Adam to Jesus, and the dust would be virgin if Adam is another version of Jesus somehow, like he's got a virgin birth somehow. So what, Genesis 2 saying that the dust that created Adam was virgin dust? I mean, I think that's what they're referring to in there, and I'm starting to come back to me now. David's clueless though.
Yeah, do not recall. Do not recall.
That's where it is in the debate review on this channel if anyone wants to go take a look at it. Please hit that like button, folks. Thank you, SlamRN, for being a member for 18 months. That is quite impressive. Just wanted to say to IP and David that you guys played a role in my conversion from oneness Pentecostalism to the Trinity in Catholicism. Thank you. Much appreciated. That is great to hear. Get out of that heresy. The Muslim Cowboy is Yusuf Estes' son. Wait, what?
No way.
Is that? No way.
No,
I don't believe that. I think that's a
If
joke.
it is, well,
I can't. I mean, I could see it, but it maybe. I don't know if that's accurate. We'd have to look it up.
Yeah, I think
Brandon
that's a joke.
Estes, Cowboy from Texas.
Oh,
Really?
wait a minute.
Brandon, wait a minute, indeed. Wait a minute. You can't. No, wait.
That would
don't know.
explain. I mean, it would explain a lot if it were true, but
Wait, that might be accurate. That might be accurate, dude. I got a picture here, and it says Muslim Cowboy's picture. Under it says Brandon Estes.
yeah, I looked up Brandon Estes. Yeah, it's got his LinkedIn here.
Yeah, that's what I found. Yeah. I don't want to put his LinkedIn
Yeah,
up because it's personal information, you know.
Yeah, customer service executive. I'm just basically looking for him. It is interesting. They got the same last name.
What the? That was the guy. That was the guy that was like Alexander Great started the Catholic Church. Like that's him.
Yeah,
right?
and that's why I said that would make sense if these. I mean, you're talking about. Wow. Yeah, I don't know, but if that would make sense because. Notice it's the exact same phenomenon like his dad showed. You can get up and spout complete idiotic nonsense. The Catholic Church was founded by Alexander the Great in 3 centuries before Christ in Rome. Look it up. It's on the Catholic website. It's right there, right? If that's your example and role model, you have learned that the people who follow you are so insanely stupid. You can just get up and say anything and they're just going to mindlessly agree with you. So that would actually explain some things, but I'd have to see a little more than even the name, but I don't see any pictures of them together, but
yeah. Notice the difference here. Like they have the same last name from what we can find, but we're not ready to just say, proven. We're like, let's get some more data here. Cause that's the way you guys should approach these things. We don't just hear something we like and immediately start spouting it. So we will look into that for sure, but that is an interesting connection. Wow. Okay.
If true, it's a shallow gene pool.
What does Satan have to do with the unfolding of Islam? Well, it was his idea. What do you expect? He came up with it. It was all part of it. He was in the cave. I'm Gabriel, and that's what basically happened. And then he did the same thing with Mormonism later. I mean that's
yeah.
That's the joke that Christians we say among ourselves. Like
there's an actual academic book called The American Muhammad. Like it's this is not anyway.
Yeah, but that's the joke we have in the church is that that Gabriel Muhammad did talk to an angel, it just wasn't one of the good ones.
I have to mute something real quick. I've got a video clip of them supposedly together. Let's see if one calls the other father or something like this. So I'm going to mute.
Yeah, can you put it up here? Let's let me see. Can you did you send it to me or do you want me to play it?
Oh, he's muted. You're muted, David.
Oh, he's listening. Yeah. He's listening. All right, I'm gonna do a super.
I'm gonna listen. Yeah, I'm gonna listen to it, and then if it's relevant, then I'll let you know.
Yeah, all right, and then
So the whole. I mean, we can't prove that Satan founded Islam. It's just a running gag we kind of have, you know. Muslims have been claiming the Quran picks out the true parts of all the extra Quranic texts. We can demonstrate a historicity of that. However, I think they need a deeper reason why that isn't a good basis for religion. Yeah, absolutely. It's just circular reasoning. The Quran gets it all right because it's the word of God, and because the Quran says it's the word of God, therefore it can go through and pick all the good stuff out. It's utter nonsense, and it's only convincing for Muslims.
And that's I think the philosophical. If we just went a pure philosophical response, is what Farmhouse is trying to get at. For example, last night, we had a Muslim say, "How do you know the Apocrypha is false, or how do you know the Apocrypha is not ahistorical?" Like, notice again in other words, the cognitive dissonance just immediately kicking in. This is like the Pharaoh drowning. I mean, you and I are friends of, say, David Falk, and we go like James Hoffmeyer, and we notice that Ramses II died at the age of 90, right? Now, so he's the Pharaoh of the Exodus, right? The Quran says a Pharaoh drowned. Now that's wrong. That's a historical claim. But no, the Quran has to be right. Ergo, anything else that is contrary to the Quran is false. But everything that works or helps with the Quran, it has to be true, right?
Well, not only that, I
so-
mean, the Quran also says crucifixion existed in the time of Moses in Egypt, which is just utter nonsense.
Exactly.
But we don't have any evidence of any pharaohs from the New Kingdom drowning in the Red Sea.
Oh,
So,
and just
like-
quickly, the Rosetta Stone. You know how Muslims come back with the Haman anachronistically put back at the time of Pharaoh, right? Which is a Persian name because Haman appears in the Book of Esther.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, that
the
one,
Rosetta Stone has Haman. Hey, guess what? That's to do with a 2nd century BC text that obviously has Persian loanwords in there. It can't be associated with the 19th dynasty of Egypt. But you see, Muslims immediately just jump on like, oh, Rosetta Stone has
Right.
Haman, not realizing that, again, it's a totally different era. So, yeah.
Are the stories involving? I don't know how to pronounce that. It's I forget that the way to pronounce that. Specifically, angels of God mentioned in the Old Testament. Good evidence against the common Muslim claim that Allah cannot manifest as human. Benjamin Sommer states that they can be seen as avatars. You ever read Benjamin Sommer? Maybe you have to think more about that argument. Are the stories involving the angels specifically mentioned in the Old Testament good evidence against the common Muslim claim that Allah cannot manifest as a human? Well, if they would just say that that's corrupted. The argument is that in the Hebrew Bible, even Benjamin Sommer admits this, as well as the book Two Powers in Heaven, that the God of the Hebrew Bible is multi-personal. He is able to sort of send himself out while he remains in heaven, which is consistent with Trinitarian theology. And Benjamin Sommer just says, I've got no theological objections to the Trinity. What I would recommend you do is you watch Jay Dyer's debate with Daniel Hakikachu, and he just makes the argument that the Hebrew scriptures are more consistent with the Christian understanding of God, not consistent with the Islamic understanding of God, because God in the Hebrew Bible is multi-personal, just as these Jewish scholars admit.
I
What'd you
have
find?
before David gets on that, I have a dissertation. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to share the screen. I have a dissertation in response to that as a recommendation, as a recommend form of reading. It's called
I think I've heard
A
of this.
Study of Anthropomorphic Theophany and Visio Dei. Basically, the deity that is visible in the Hebrew Bible. Notice the Quran and early Sunni Islam. Now, this is University of Michigan, 2008, Near Eastern dissertation. His argument, okay, if you look at the contents page, his argument is that he goes through what is already known, like in Heiser's works and so on, that you have the second power, as Sommer and going back to Alan Siegel. You have the visibility of Yahweh as a second power, right? But then he wants to showcase that same thing can be seen in the Quran. So you literally have like a two Allahs. So in other words, the Allah that appears to Muhammad versus the Allah that can't be seen, right? So that's the dissertation and the argument, and that therefore this was then ironically corrupted later on in Islamic tradition.
What do you got for us, David? You find anything?
He has done things with Yusuf Estes. There are videos of them together. He's listed as a student of Yusuf Estes. I didn't find anything, and I basically just looked through a couple of Facebook posts and so on where they're mentioned together. I didn't find anything saying he's his son. It is interesting that they both live in the same area and work together, work for the same ministry, and have the same last name. But with that said, it could be, or they could be, it could be other relatives. Like it could be like his cousins twice removed or something.
I don't
like
know.
that.
This is getting interesting.
It is. It is
real
very interesting. Oh, it's interesting because you have something similar with Yasser Qadi, and that people have been following Sheikh Yasser Qadi for years, And I've been using as one of the quotes to show how deceptive the Dawa guys are. I've been using a book by Mazhar Qazi for years, where he says that it's a fact that is understood by scholars, both Muslim scholars and non-Muslim scholars across the board. Everyone grants that there has not been a single letter changed in the entire history of the Quran, and that there's not two manuscripts in the entire history of the Quran that differ in even a single dot or a single letter. So that's a complete lie. It's complete, like idiotic, like insanely idiotic lie. But then I found out after all these years, I've been using that quote since probably 2005, 2006. And then I found out that's Sheikh Yasser Qadhi's dad. I was like, wait, Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, the guy who was spouting the perfect preservation nonsense, but he started it with speaking to popular level audiences. Sheikh Yasser Qadhi would say perfect preservation right down to the letter from the time of Uthman down to the present. But when he's talking to what he calls students of knowledge, these are people who are going to become scholars, he starts telling them that there are all these differences in the Quran because he knows they're going to encounter them. So he was giving two completely different messages. One to the popular audience, perfect preservation right down to the letter. And then to scholarly audiences or people who are going to find out anyway, then he tells them about the differences in the Quran. And then these issues kind of get brought to the surface with his interview with Muhammad Hijab, where he's sort of pinned in the corner. Tell us what you really think. He's like, no, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. Do not make me say this here. So he helped expose that. But then looking back, and it's like, wait, your dad is one of the guys who made up the lie. His dad is one of the people who spread this total myth with his nonsense. And like, so it kind of puts you in a bind, because what are you going to do? Say it was all a lie? You're not just exposing Dawa, you're exposing your own dad. And so anyway, there are these family connections. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah. We'll look more. I mean, at least you found information he's associated with him, which would explain the poor reasoning connection for sure. Because that Alexander the Great argument was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
Hey, but Alexander is in the Quran. Dul Qarnayn in Surah 18, he goes and sees a setting place of the sun. That's exactly in the Sirach legend of Alexander. So
yeah, he found the place of the setting. He found the setting place of the sun, and then went and started the Catholic Church in Rome.
Yeah. Right. If Genesis proves Rebecca was 3, it also proves that her father was a newborn when Rebecca was born to him. This and their understanding of puberty makes me think Muslims have no idea about human anatomy. Yeah, I'd have to look more into that. I don't think it lists any ages in Genesis. So.
No, because the passage that they have to use is at the end of Genesis 22, and it says when Abraham found out the news from what had happened, and it lists Rebecca there, and they say, see, that's when Rebecca was born. And so the point is, if you're saying, oh, that's where it mentions Rebecca, therefore that's when Rebecca was born. Well, it also mentions Bethuel there. So that's when he was born. That's when all these people were born. Somehow all these people were born right at that second when Abraham hears news from back home. And so
and a Second Temple Jew who wrote Jubilees got it woefully wrong. In other words, the whole calendar system that Jews were using at the time of Jesus and before Jesus, the Qumran community and so on, they got it completely wrong when they're arguing for Rebecca's age at marriage to be 20.
Thank you, Michelle, for becoming a YouTube member. Much appreciated. You will gain early access to all videos, including the one I have coming out this Sunday on how Christianity changed the world. A lot of studies in that video. What is the defense or reasoning behind Mo not being written about until centuries after? A lot of different theories. I think you're talking about hadiths being written about long after. What do you say on that, David?
One of the common claims is that Muhammad didn't want hadiths written down because people would confuse those with the Quran. I just think that the methodology didn't become. And matter of fact, we know that the methodology wasn't solidified till a long time after. You had competing methodologies. If you look at Joshua Little, his doctoral dissertation on. It's actually, he's trying to defend Muhammad against criticism of Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old girl. And he says that he's trying to take away this weapon of the Islamophobes and so on. But in the course of that dissertation, so I just want to point out, this is not a guy who's a critic of Islam. This guy's trying to defend Islam against the Islamophobes. But in the course of that, he gives a breakdown of hadith methodology and so on. And among Western scholars, among non-Muslim scholars, Hadith methodology is pretty much a joke. And so the idea, Joshua Little's position is basically there is a guy named Muhammad, and he does teach his followers Islam and so on, but afterwards you end up with Islam was sort of it differed. It was regional. There were regional different versions of Islam. So there's a version in Kufa, there's a version in Medina, there's a version in Mecca. There's different versions of Islam, and they have different rulings on things. But eventually, after a time, they realize they need some sort of like overarching just one Islam, this pan-Islam. But by that time, these guys are competing to see whose version of these different issues is going to win. And so they start fabricating stories, right? And so they're fabricating stories, and they're competing to who can get back to the most original. And so they keep going back with earlier and earlier names until they're all going back all the way to a companion of Muhammad who supposedly heard this from Muhammad. It's basically an arms race of who could defend their claim the best by making up a story about how this goes back to Muhammad. And so non-Muslim scholars have very little respect for Hadith methodology. They treat it as kind of like a very silly methodology that was invented as a means to deceive people into thinking that their stories are true. So my view would be these things they didn't arise. I mean, you had some oral traditions about Muhammad and so on, but later on they're making up hadiths, and then in order to defend the hadiths, they have to attach this list of names and so on. So yeah, I think so. You have a difference of what's their defense and what do you think actually happened. What I think actually happened is there were stories circulating about Muhammad, and then they tried to defend them by attaching these lists of names to them. What their defense is the thing I hear most is that Muhammad didn't want these stories written down, and the early companions didn't want these things written down because they didn't want people to confuse them with the Quran, which sort of that flies in the face of the typical Muslim understanding of the Quran, because the Quran is supposedly so masterfully written and eloquent that no one can write anything like it. And so if no one can write anything like it, why would anyone confuse hadiths with the Quran when it's in its own category, and anyone who can speak the language can spot how wonderful it is.
So, just David, can I just ask for a quick summarization? So when you have Aisha narrates something about, like, in other words, what she's saying, like, I play with dolls and I did this and that.
Yeah.
Is that part of the this agenda to mock Muhammad, according to Little's dissertation? Because I haven't really looked into it too deep,
So in his view, and so I think there's no question that people are fabricating things, and they're in this arms race for who can go back earliest and to defend their position and so on. Then the question is, how much of this material can we actually trust? And so, do you trust stories like Muhammad with? But no, the claim is not that this was maliciously invented. The claim is that this comes out of Aisha's family line, so the Abu Bakr family, and they're trying to solidify their own family as authoritative in Islam. And so, to draw more attention to Aisha, you want to show that Aisha's different from all the other wives, and that she's special. And so she's the virgin. Well, how are you going to say she's a virgin? Well, we'll just say she's so young that we'll say that she's so young that she was obviously going to be a virgin at this point. Well, how are we going to say that she was really 9 years old? We'll put it in her own mouth. We'll say that we'll have her saying it. So I don't fully buy that. It's kind of a big mess, and you can kind of make any argument out of it you want. So you can say that actually goes back to Aisha, and Aisha herself said it, because you have a ton of these hadiths. You have over 200 saying that Aisha was 9 years old. Either she's saying it or someone else is saying it. So you have like 200. Yeah. You have like 200 plus of these hadiths, and so it's a question of, is it actually authentic, or is it something that's made up for an agenda? You just don't. when your sources come from 2 centuries after you can kind of say whatever you want. You can say someone invented it at some point for an agenda. You could say it's authentic. It's just it's a big mess.
Because that's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of the grading scale, and now it's a chicken and egg issue with the grading. If it's Sahih and otherwise,
Yeah.
FYI, Mike, David just converted to Christianity live on Red Bar during his investigation into your channel. Well, that's incredible to hear. That's absolutely beautiful. It's true. I don't know how to watch that, so I can't verify it. But so praise the Lord. He says he's still investigating your ministry finances, though. Strange guy. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that I think last week, and I was like, I started thinking about it after. I'm like, what, like, why? Like, I don't bring in that much. Like, I'm not like a millionaire.
Why are you investigating this broke loser here?
I mean, I'll tell you things I spent on. Like, I built bookshelves. I had to pay someone to help me build bookshelves because I don't have time. And like some of these books are expensive. Like I was looking at this one. So I had to order this one, Rob. You'll love this one. To get to read this, this was like $100. This book. So sometimes I got to order books like this. This was $100 to get, but I needed it because there was important information that Richard Hess said I needed. So like I have that. Sometimes I got to spend like a lot of money on books. Fly to ETS, things like that.
Yeah. One time you shared I saw a picture of your backyard, man. You got a crap backyard, man. It looks like straight ghetto, man. I don't know how you're balling. I don't know how you're balling. You're one of those dudes that's got like 50 million in the bank, but you live like you're poor. It's messed up.
Yeah. We have one car. We can afford one car. Okay. So we have a car. I don't know what you're looking for, man. If he wants to talk, I'd be happy to talk with him directly. If he wants to message me through my website or on Twitter, I guess. Email through the website's the best. I may be happy to talk with him. I don't know what it would be investigating though. It is said that Muslims can lie in order to convert others. Is this true? I understand Sunni versus Shia might play a part. What is that, David?
If you just read like, let's say the Quran or something like this, I don't think you'd get the impression that it's okay to lie, to convert others. What you do have is you can lie about your agenda and things like that, right? So you can lie if you're planning on conquering the world and subjugating the unbelievers. You can totally lie about that. You can hate and despise and want to destroy the unbelievers, but you can lie about what your actual plans are. That's very clear. You also, if you're at war with someone, Muhammad said war is deceit. So your goal is to trick and deceive people. So you have things like that, right? It's not, you don't look and say, okay, you lie to people to get them to convert. You have Muhammad kind of bribing people. Like you said, he just kept giving people gold, kept giving them gold and gold and gold and gold and gold until they converted to Islam. So you have things like that, but it's more of, I don't know what it is. It's just completely accepted in Dawah. So I'm thinking about how you would rationalize it and justify it according to the Muslim sources. And it would go something like this. So Muhammad says war is deceit, but they view themselves as in a kind of war, not a physical war with the rest of the world. It's the house of Islam and the house of war, according to them. With the outsiders, you're in a constant state of war, but it's not, war isn't just marching out into the battle with them. It's just, if we can't march out into battle because we're weaker, then we're waging a different kind of war. So they talk about jihad of, the jihad of the pen and so on, different kinds of jihad. So I think as far as how they would justify this in their minds, we are in a state of war with all these unbelievers. War is deceit. You're allowed to deceive them. And if you lie to them, if you make things up about Islam, so you say you're in an area where people really prize women's rights, and you say, oh, Muhammad is a champion feminist. He's practically the greatest feminist who ever lived. That's a total lie. But think about this. If you tell people, if you make things up that Muhammad was a champion of feminism, or Muhammad was this brilliant scientific mind, and so whatever you're saying to them, if this helps them to convert, the Quran contains miraculous scientific insights that couldn't have possibly been known in his time. Whatever you're lying about, the Quran's been perfectly preserved and the Bible's been corrupted. And no, the Quran says the Bible's been corrupted. Don't actually read it. Oh, you'll see the opposite, but trust us on this. In their minds, it seems to be, hey, if I lie to you, if you're going to hell, if you, the unbeliever, the person who's rejecting Islam, if you're going to hell and I lie to you to get you to become a Muslim, and then you're going to heaven, have I done something bad? No, I've done something good. I've helped you through my lie. And to be clear, you do have later Muslim commentaries and so on. So you have like Ghazali and so on, who says if the goal is justifiable, then lying to get it is justifiable. And so you have things like that. So yeah, it's not a situation where the Quran says go lie to people to convert them to Islam. Somehow the entire Dawah community has got the message that it's okay to lie to people. And I don't know, because they don't explain to you how they rationalize it. They clearly believe it's okay to lie to people. And so just me thinking, I can think of some possible ways to justify it, but it's just a fact. That is what they think. It'd be great to see one of these guys leave Islam and break down what his thought patterns were when he was just completely lying about what Islam teaches, what Christianity teaches, what about science, like what's the rationale.
Yeah, we got to wrap this up because I got to put my daughter to bed. But what do you have here, Rob? What is this?
As a university student, I just want to show how much of a millionaire I am. There's my
You're rolling in that apologetic money. Look at that. Whoa, boy! You better calm down.
Oh man!
By the way, everyone, this would be a good time to plug Rob for Sentinel Apologetics. If you want to support him, go over to his channel and check that out.
Apparently, he's starving to death.
Someone give that man $70. Look, give the man $75
so then I'm
he can pay off
$2.
that balance, and then he can have a couple dollars to buy some ramen noodles.
Yeah. I'll be happy to talk with David from Red Bar.
And there's also 50-cent slots with a little gummy bear sweet thing at the local 7-Eleven. So yeah.
Loaves of Bread said, I've heard that Aisha is 9 because Ali reverted at 11. I'm not sure what that's referring to. I guess it's just someone's trying to do math in the hadiths. Yeah. Here we go. Any chance P. Diddy comes out as Muslim? 50% of the time, it works every time.
It works every time. I actually wondered that. I was wondering. I think I mentioned that the other day because you do have this. You do have this pattern of these guys. They get in all kinds of trouble, and then the media's after them, and looks like they're going to be exposed. Suddenly, oopsie! I converted to Islam. I'm a Muslim now. You see, I'm a victim. They're just persecuting me because I'm a Muslim. So. Yeah, I don't know. Notice you have no reason to think that P. Diddy is going to become a Muslim, except that a bunch of other guys get the exact same idea when they're in trouble. Hey, now I'm going to convert to Islam, and that way I could be a victim. But yeah, I wouldn't say 50%. I'd say I don't know, 20% chance that this guy comes out as a Muslim here in the near future.
Horrible things. All right, everyone. Appreciate coming. We need to look into more on the connection between Brandon Yusuf and Yusuf Estes, because that's an interesting connection we may have discovered. But go ahead, Rob. What is it?
All right. In closing, here's icing on the cake. I'm going to share something I found. I was doing a little bit of study on Al-Alamin in Surah 1, right? It's interesting that, and this is in one of the commentaries I've been reading, the Jewish Shah Ha-Olam, which is the prince of the aeons or the world, whom St. Paul calls the god of this world in 2 Corinthians 4, which we know as Satan, right? The Greek cosmos corresponds to the Hebrew Olamim, or aeon. So the Jews, unlike the Greeks, did not so much regard the outward beauty of creation as its inward significance. For them, the interests of the universe, quote, centered rather in the moral than in the physical order. The Muslim title of God is Lord of the Worlds, and this guy puts it as 3. But notice, Rab al-Alamin. Interesting. Is Surah 1 the Lord of the Worlds? Is that the God of this world? Like, is that the cognate equivalent at play? Olam, Alamin. And that's a little bit of a thing to think about.
Yeah, it could be. It seems a little speculative, but yeah. All right. Appreciate you guys coming. I will link your channels below if I didn't already. Rob jumping in at the last minute. Appreciate it. Yeah. Muslim Cowboy's reasoning, pretty bad. But we will be talking about him more if he continues doing what he's doing, because my God, is he a wellspring for content creation. So, all right, everyone. We will see you next time.